The Alpha King was dying on the cold stone floor, and it was entirely Aria's fault. Blood dripped from his nose, dark against the gray flagstones. His hand clutched his chest where the mate bond had shattered, where she'd shattered it, and even from across the hall, Aria could see the deathly pallor spreading across his skin like poison. 30 days. That's all he had left. And she couldn't bring herself to feel sorry. But hey, before we dive into how we got here and what happens next, because trust me, you are not ready for where this story goes. Where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city or country in the comments below. I love seeing my pack scattered across the globe, and I want to know you're here with me for this journey. And listen, if you haven't subscribed yet, do it right now. Hit that button, turn on notifications, because this story is going to tear your heart out in the best possible way, and I've got so many more emotional, intense tales coming that you won't want to miss. This channel is for everyone who believes that love is complicated, that fate doesn't always get it right the first time, and that sometimes the hardest person to forgive is the one you're destined to love. So subscribe, settle in, and let's go back to the moment that changed everything. 12 minutes earlier. Aria's fingers trembled against the rough wood of the servants' bench, splinters biting into her palms. She welcomed the pain. Pain meant she was still here, still invisible, still safe in the shadows where Omegas like her belonged. The grand hall of the Silver Pine Pack was suffocating tonight. Hundreds of wolves packed into the ancient stone chamber for the annual gathering, their scents thick with anticipation, alcohol, and the particular kind of violence that always simmered beneath pack politics. Torchlight threw dancing shadows across walls that had witnessed centuries of blood and dominance. Just 30 more minutes, Aria told herself, keeping her eyes fixed on the worn stone at her feet. Then you can disappear. 23 years of survival had taught her the most important lesson. Invisibility was armor. The threadbare gray dress she wore, patched so many times the original fabric was barely visible, marked her as clearly as a brand. Lowborn Omega. Packless. Worthless. Around her, wolves in fine leathers and rich furs laughed and drank, celebrating like Omegas didn't exist. Like she didn't exist. Good. Let them forget. Forgetting kept her breathing. But tonight, something was wrong. The air tasted metallic, electric, like the moment before lightning struck. Her wolf, dormant for 12 years since the trauma that had stolen her childhood, suddenly stirred with a restlessness that made Aria's skin prickle. Did you hear? Lana, another Omega servant, leaned close, her whisper urgent and terrified. The Alpha King is coming. Here. Tonight. Every muscle in Aria's body locked. No. That name, Daemon Blackthorn, was a curse she'd learned to bury deep. The Alpha King who'd unified the 5 territories through brutality and blood. The warrior whose reputation made grown alphas drop their eyes in submission. The monster who'd destroyed Moonhaven Pack 12 years ago. Her pack. Her home. Her parents. He doesn't visit small packs like ours, Aria managed, though her voice sounded distant even to her own ears. We're nothing to him. Alpha Cade got word 3 hours ago. Lana's face was pale. His convoy was spotted at the northern border. The massive oak doors exploded inward. Not literally. But the presence that entered hit like a shockwave, stealing the air from the room and the noise from every throat. The raucous celebration died instantly, as if the night itself had been cut off mid-breath. Aria's wolf surged awake with a force that nearly doubled her over. After 12 years of silence, of being a ghost inside her own body, her wolf suddenly screamed to life with a desperation that bordered on madness. No. Go back to sleep. Whatever this is, go back. The Alpha King, someone breathed, and the words rippled through the crowd like a prayer to a dark god. Aria didn't want to look. Every instinct honed by years of survival screamed at her to keep her head down, to fade into the shadows, to survive. But something inexorable, something that felt older than thought itself, pulled her gaze upward. And the world shattered. Daemon Blackthorn stood in the doorway like violence carved into flesh. Taller than any wolf she'd ever seen, his frame radiated the kind of raw, predatory power that made submission instinctive. Dark hair fell past his collar, and his face, all sharp angles and brutal beauty, was set in an expression of cold authority that had broken alphas and conquered territories. He wore black leather armor etched with silver runes that seemed to drink the torchlight. A crimson cloak spilled from his shoulders like fresh blood. At his side hung a sword that legend claimed had ended more lives than anyone dared count. But it was his eyes that destroyed her. Storm gray, ancient, haunted by shadows she couldn't name. And looking directly at her, the mate bond slammed into Aria like a physical blow, a golden thread of destiny and power yanking impossibly tight between her soul and his, burning through every defense she'd spent 12 years building. Her wolf erupted with a joy so intense it felt like dying, howling one word over and over until it drowned out thought. Mate. 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 No. No. This couldn't. Across the hall, Daemon went absolutely still. His eyes widened, the only crack in that controlled mask, and then something raw and desperate flashed across his features. Shock. Recognition. Hope so fierce it looked like pain. He took a step toward her. The crowd parted like he was Moses and they were the Red Sea, wolves scrambling over each other to clear his path. Their faces showed confusion, curiosity, the beginning of understanding. But Aria could only see flames. Moonhaven burning. Buildings collapsing. Her father's broken body in the ash. Her mother's blood-soaked hands cupping her face one last time, whispering, "Run, little star. Run and don't look back." She'd been 11 years old. Alone. Terrified. And she'd run. The mate bond pulled at her now, demanding she go to him, accept him, complete what fate had cruelly begun. Her wolf was clawing at her insides, desperate to close the distance. But all Aria could feel was rage. This male, this monster, had murdered her parents. Had destroyed everything she'd ever loved. Had left her alone in a world that treated omegas like garbage. And fate expected her to love him? Daemon was 10 feet away. 5. The crowd watched in stunned silence, beginning to realize what they were witnessing. An Alpha King didn't cross a room like this unless... No. Aria's voice cracked as she forced herself to stand, her legs shaking so violently she had to lock her knees. Don't come any closer. He stopped instantly, his hands raising in a gesture of peace that looked wrong on someone so lethal. You feel it. His voice was rough, deep, like gravel and honey combined. The bond. You're my... I know what I am. The words came out sharper than she'd ever dared speak in this hall. Around her, pack members gasped. No one interrupted an Alpha King. No one spoke to him with anything less than absolute reverence. But Aria was drowning in 12 years of grief, and the mate bond was trying to pull her toward the male responsible for all of it. She met his eyes, those storm gray eyes that were looking at her like she was salvation incarnate, and spoke the words that would doom them both. I, Aria of no pack, reject you, Daemon Blackthorn, as my mate. The bond didn't break. It shattered. Like bones splintering. Like glass exploding. Like something vital and irreplaceable being ripped from her chest and set on fire. Aria staggered, catching the bench, tasting copper. Her wolf howled in anguish and betrayal, a sound that would echo in her soul for the rest of her life. But it was nothing compared to what happened to Daemon. The Alpha King's face went white as death. His hand flew to his chest, directly over his heart, and for the first time in his legendary life, Daemon Blackthorn fell to his knees. The sound of the most powerful wolf in 5 territories hitting stone echoed like a funeral bell. Blood began seeping from his nose. Then his ears. Dark and steady, the unmistakable sign of a bond death beginning. My king! His guards lunged forward, but Daemon waved them back with a trembling hand. The hall erupted in horrified whispers. Everyone knew what this meant. An Alpha King's mate bond wasn't like ordinary wolves. It was tied to their power, their life force, their ability to rule. Rejection didn't just wound them. It killed them. 30 days. Maybe less. Daemon raised his eyes to hers, and the expression there made something in Aria's chest crack despite her rage. Not anger. Not hatred. Understanding. Moonhaven, he said quietly, his voice carrying despite its weakness. You're from Moonhaven Pack. She couldn't speak. Her throat had closed completely. I know what you think happened. Daemon wiped blood from his face with the back of his hand, movements careful, controlled, a male desperately clinging to composure while his body betrayed him. I know what they told you. But the truth, Aria interrupted, and her voice shook but held, is that my parents died screaming your name. The truth is that you're a murderer wearing a crown. And the truth is that I would rather die than accept a monster as my mate. Silence. Absolute. Suffocating. Daemon looked at her for a long moment. Then, impossibly, he smiled, sad and broken, and somehow still devastatingly beautiful. Then I'll die, he said simply. But before I do. He pushed himself to his feet with visible effort, swaying. His guards moved to support him, but he shook them off with royal stubbornness. Before I do, I'm going to prove that everything you believe about me is wrong. You can't. 30 days. His storm gray eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made her wolf whimper. I have 30 days before this kills me. I won't force your acceptance. Won't use my power or position to manipulate you. But I will stay here, in this pack, and I will show you the truth about Moonhaven. About your parents. About everything. I don't want your truth. I know. He took one step closer, just one, and the vulnerability in his face made her chest ache in a way she didn't understand. But you're my mate. And even if you never accept me, even if I die with your rejection burning in my heart, you deserve to know what really happened. You deserve the truth, even if it changes nothing. Liar. Maybe. More blood trickled down his face. 30 days, Aria. That's all I'm asking. 30 days to show you who I really am. Either way. His voice dropped to a whisper that somehow reached every corner of the hall. Either way, you'll be free of me. Forever. Then Daemon Blackthorn, the Alpha King, the wolf who'd never bent to anyone, collapsed. His guards caught him before he hit the ground. Chaos erupted, shouting, movement, Alpha Cade barking orders. But Aria stood frozen, her hand pressed against her chest where the broken bond was screaming, and stared at the male she'd just sentenced to death. Her wolf was howling with grief. And beneath the rage and pain and 12 years of hatred, a tiny, traitorous voice whispered, "What if he's telling the truth? So here's my question for you. If your worst enemy turned out to be your soulmate, would you give them 30 days to prove themselves? Or would you let fate's cruelest joke play out?" Drop your answer in the comments. I genuinely want to know where you stand before we go deeper into this story. Aria didn't sleep that night. How could she, when every time she closed her eyes, she saw storm gray irises bleeding with pain? When her wolf, her traitorous, broken wolf, wouldn't stop whimpering like a kicked dog. When the phantom ache of the shattered mate bond pulsed in her chest like a second heartbeat, reminding her with every breath that she'd just killed her fated mate. Good, she told herself viciously, staring at the cracked ceiling of the servants' quarters. He deserves to die. But her hands wouldn't stop shaking. The pre-dawn darkness pressed against the single narrow window, and around her, the other Omega servants slept the exhausted sleep of wolves who'd worked 16-hour days. Their soft breathing should have been comforting. Instead, it felt suffocating. Aria sat up carefully, her threadbare blanket falling away. The servants' quarters were cramped, 12 beds packed into a space meant for 6, the air thick with the scent of unwashed bodies and desperation. This had been her home for 3 years, ever since Alpha Cade had generously allowed a packless Omega to work in his territory. Work. That was a kind word for it. She pulled on her worn dress in the dark, fingers automatically finding the patches she'd sewn herself. The largest one, over her left shoulder, covered a tear from when Beta Garrett had grabbed her roughly 2 months ago. The one on her hip hid the burn mark from when she'd been too slow moving away from the cooking fires. Each patch was a story. Each story was a lesson in survival. Stay invisible. Stay silent. Stay alive. Those had been her rules since Moonhaven fell. But last night, she'd shattered every single one. Aria slipped out of the quarters, her bare feet silent on the cold stone. The pack house was eerily quiet in the hours before dawn, the calm before the servants were expected to have breakfast prepared, fires lit, and the day's work already underway. She should be starting those tasks now. Should be grateful for the opportunity to serve a pack that tolerated her existence. Instead, she found herself walking toward the healer's wing. Just to make sure he's really dying, she told herself. Just to confirm he can't hurt anyone else. Liar. The hallway to the healer's chambers was guarded. Of course it was. 2 of the Alpha King's personal guards stood flanking the door, both wearing the black and crimson that marked them as Demon's elite warriors. They were massive, scarred, and looked like they could tear her apart without breaking a sweat. Aria should have turned around. Should have run. But before she could move, one of the guards, a male with a jagged scar running from his eye to his jaw, caught her scent and turned. His hand went to his weapon automatically. Omega. His voice was flat, neither kind nor cruel. Just empty. State your business. Aria's throat closed. What was she doing here? What could she possibly say? The second guard, younger but no less dangerous, leaned forward and inhaled deeply. His eyes widened in recognition. Liam, that's her. That's the King's. I know who she is, Theo. Liam's scarred face was unreadable. Question is, what's she doing here? I wanted to. Aria's voice came out barely above a whisper. She forced herself to speak louder, even though every instinct screamed at her to submit, to grovel, to disappear. I wanted to see if he's really dying. Silence. The 2 guards exchanged a look she couldn't interpret. Then Liam stepped aside. He's been asking for you, he said quietly. Every time he wakes up, your name is the first thing he says. Something that might have been judgment flickered across his scarred face. Go ahead. See what you've done. The words hit like a physical blow, but Aria forced herself forward. Her hand trembled as she pushed open the heavy wooden door. The healer's chamber was lit by soft candlelight, and it smelled of herbs, blood, and something darker, the scent of death slowly approaching. In the center of the room, on a bed far too small for his frame, lay Daemon Blackthorn. He looked worse than she'd expected. The powerful, terrifying Alpha King from last night was gone. In his place was a male who looked like he'd aged a decade in a few hours. His skin had taken on a grayish pallor, dark circles shadowing his eyes. His breathing was shallow, labored. Even unconscious, his hand rested over his heart, as if trying to hold together something that was falling apart. He's in pain. Aria spun around. An elderly woman sat in the corner, pack healer Nora, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, her face carved with wrinkles that spoke of decades of tending to the wounded and dying. All the time, Nora continued, not looking up from the herbs she was grinding. Even when the medicine puts him under, his body knows the bond is broken. It's not a gentle death, child. Bond death rarely is. Aria's hands clenched at her sides. Good. Nora's hands stilled. She looked up then, her dark eyes sharp and knowing in a way that made Aria want to squirm. Is it? Because you don't look like a female celebrating her enemy's demise. You look like a female who's being torn apart from the inside. You don't know anything about me. I know you're an Omega who's been surviving on scraps and fear for years. I know you're from Moonhaven, I can see it in your features, child. The people of that pack had a particular look about them. Nora's expression softened slightly. And I know that mate bonds don't care about logic or history or even justice. They just are. And rejecting one, well, it's killing both of you, just at different speeds. I'm fine. You're bleeding. Aria looked down. Her palms were bleeding where her nails had dug into them. She hadn't even felt it. He'll die in 30 days, Nora said matter-of-factly, returning to her herbs. Maybe less, if the deterioration speeds up. His heart will simply stop. Some Alpha Kings last longer, but... She gestured at Daemon's still form. He's not fighting it. Most males in his position would rage, would try to force the bond's acceptance, would use every ounce of their power to survive. But him? He's just accepting it. Like he thinks he deserves it. Something uncomfortable twisted in Aria's chest. He does. Maybe. Maybe not. Nora measured out a dark powder into a cup. But here's what I know, child. Daemon Blackthorn has been Alpha King for 15 years. In that time, he's united 5 territories, ended 3 civil wars, and brought a level of peace and prosperity that none of our parents ever dreamed of. He's also ruthless, brutal when he needs to be, and has made decisions that cost lives. Like Moonhaven. Like Moonhaven, Nora agreed. But did you ever ask yourself why? Why an Alpha King known for strategic brilliance would destroy a small, relatively powerless pack? What possible threat could Moonhaven have posed? Aria had asked herself that question 1,000 times over 12 years. And she'd never found an answer that made sense. It doesn't matter, she said instead. He still did it. No. It matters more than you know. Nora stood, carrying the cup toward Daemon's bedside. But I'm not going to tell you what to believe, child. I'm just going to say this. In 30 days, you'll be free of him forever. But you'll have to live with your choice for the rest of your life. So maybe, just maybe, you should find out the whole truth before then. Before Aria could respond, Daemon stirred. His eyes opened, those storm-gray eyes that had haunted her through the sleepless night, and immediately found her standing in the shadows. For a moment, something like hope flickered across his face. Then it died, replaced by resignation. Aria. Her name sounded like a prayer and a curse combined. You're here. I came to make sure you were really dying. The words came out harsher than she'd intended, a defense mechanism against the way her wolf was suddenly throwing itself against her ribcage, desperate to get closer to him. Daemon's lips quirked in a sad smile. Disappointed. Thrilled. Liar. He tried to sit up, grimaced, and fell back against the pillows. Nora moved to help him, but he waved her off. I'm fine. You're dying, Nora said bluntly. And you'll die faster if you don't stay still and let me work. 30 days, Daemon said, his eyes still locked on Aria. I have 30 days. That's enough. Enough for what? Aria demanded. To make me feel guilty? To manipulate me into accepting a bond one never wanted. Enough to give you the truth. Daemon's voice was rough with pain, but steady. Certain. Starting with this, I didn't order Moonhaven's destruction. The world seemed to tilt sideways. You're lying. No. Daemon struggled to sit up again, and this time he succeeded, though the effort left him breathing hard. Blood trickled from his nose. He wiped it away absently, like it was an annoyance rather than a sign of his impending death. I didn't order it. I didn't even know about it until it was over. That's impossible. You were leading the territorial consolidation. Everyone knows. Everyone knows the story that was convenient, Daemon interrupted. The story that made me look like a ruthless conqueror instead of something else. His jaw clenched. Your pack wasn't destroyed because I wanted to expand my territory, Aria. It was destroyed because someone in my own council betrayed me. And by the time I found out, your parents were already dead. Aria's legs suddenly felt unsteady. She gripped the door frame for support. No. You're just trying to. I'm dying in 30 days, no matter what you believe, Daemon said quietly. I have no reason to lie. But I have every reason to make sure you know the truth before I'm gone. He held out his hand, not in a commanding gesture, but almost pleading. Give me the 30 days. Let me show you what really happened. And if, at the end, you still want me dead, then I'll die knowing I tried. Why? The word burst out of her. Why does it matter to you what I think? You're an Alpha King. You've probably had hundreds of lovers, thousands of wolves who would do anything for you. Because you're my mate. The raw emotion in those words made her breath catch. Because from the moment our eyes met, everything else in the world stopped mattering. Because my wolf recognized yours, and even though you hate me, even though you have every right to hate me, I can't just die without trying to fix this. Without trying to give you the truth your parents would want you to have. Don't you dare bring my parents into this. Your mother's name was Charlotte, Daemon said softly. Your father was James. They were respected in Moonhaven, known for their kindness and wisdom. And the night they died, your mother made me promise something. Aria's heart stopped. What are you talking about? You were never in Moonhaven. You never met my parents. I arrived too late to save them. Daemon's voice cracked. But I was there when your mother took her last breath. And she made me swear on my life, on my crown, on everything I held sacred, that I would find her daughter. That I would tell you the truth about what happened. That I would. He closed his eyes, pain etched across his features. That I would tell you she loved you. And that you should never blame yourself for surviving. The room spun. Aria's back hit the wall, her legs giving out completely. She slid to the floor, her breath coming in harsh gasps. No, that's not you're lying. You have to be lying. I have proof. Daemon's voice was gentle now, despite the obvious agony he was in. Papers, testimonies, witness accounts. Everything you need to understand what really happened that night. I was going to present it all at the gathering last night before. He gestured vaguely at his deteriorating body. Before this. Nora cleared her throat. He's telling the truth, child. I've seen the documents. So has Alpha Cade. That's why the king was allowed to stay here, despite everything. Aria couldn't process this. Couldn't think past the roaring in her ears and the way her wolf was howling, not in grief now, but in confusion and desperate hope. Why didn't you find me before now? She whispered. If my mother made you promise, why did it take 12 years? Daemon's expression turned haunted. Because I didn't know where you were. You disappeared after Moonhaven fell, and I searched God, Aria, I searched. But a packless Omega with no family, no connections. You learned to be invisible. And by the time I finally tracked you to Silverpine Pack, 3 years had passed since you'd arrived here. I was planning to approach you carefully, to explain everything. He laughed bitterly. And then the mate bond snapped into place, and I realized fate had given me the cruelest gift imaginable. Cruel for both of us, Aria managed. Yes. Daemon met her eyes, and the understanding there, the shared pain, made something in her chest crack. But maybe if I can give you the truth, it won't all be for nothing. Maybe you can finally have closure, even if I... He trailed off, but they both knew how that sentence ended. Even if I die. Silence fell, heavy and suffocating. Outside the window, dawn was breaking, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. Finally, Aria forced herself to speak. What do you want from me? 30 days, Daemon said simply. Stay at the pack house. Let me show you the evidence. Let me introduce you to the witnesses who survived that night. And at the end, he took a shaky breath. At the end, you decide. If you believe me, if you understand what really happened, maybe you'll accept the bond. If not, another sad smile. If not, at least you'll know the truth before I'm gone. And if I refuse? If I just walk away right now, then I'll still die, Daemon said quietly. But you'll spend the rest of your life wondering if I was telling the truth. If your parents died for reasons you never understood. If the male you rejected actually deserved your hatred, or if... He paused. Or if you killed your mate for someone else's sins. The words hit like arrows, each one finding its mark. Aria looked at him, really looked at him. At the Alpha King, who was supposed to be a monster, but who looked more like a broken male desperately trying to right an ancient wrong. At the mate bond that, even shattered, was pulling at her heart with invisible strings. At the possibility that everything she'd believed for 12 years might be a lie. "I need to think," she whispered. "That's all I'm asking." Demon leaned back against the pillows, exhaustion clear in every line of his body. "Think. Consider. And if you decide to give me the 30 days, I'll be here. Dying. Waiting." His eyes held hers. Hoping. Aria fled. She pushed past the guards, ignoring their concerned glances, and ran through the pack house corridors until she burst outside into the cold dawn air. Her chest heaved, her hands trembled, and her wolf was going absolutely insane inside her mind. "Go back. He's hurting. He's dying. He's OURS. He killed them," Aria said out loud, her voice breaking. "He killed Mom and Dad. He has to have. Because if he didn't, if he's telling the truth, then I just murdered her mate for nothing. Condemned an innocent male to death. Shattered the one bond fate had given her." "Hey!" A gentle voice broke through her spiraling thoughts. Aria looked up to find Lana standing there, holding 2 cups of tea, her expression worried. "I saw you come back. Thought you might need this." Aria took the cup with shaking hands, grateful for something solid to hold on to. "Did you know about Demon investigating Moonhaven?" Lana hesitated. "I'd heard rumors. The pack's been talking about it since the king arrived. Apparently, he's been searching for Moonhaven survivors for years. She bit her lip. "There's talk that maybe the story we all heard about that night wasn't the whole truth. Why didn't anyone tell me? Would you have listened?" Lana asked gently. "Aria, you've spent 12 years hating the Alpha King, building your entire identity around that hatred. If someone had come to you yesterday and said, 'Hey, maybe he's not the monster you think,' would you have believed them?" No, she wouldn't have. But now, with the mate bond screaming in her chest and Demon's words echoing in her mind, she couldn't not believe. Couldn't ignore the possibility. "What do I do?" Aria whispered. Lana was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I think you already know. You just don't want to admit it." She was right. Aria closed her eyes, feeling the broken bond pulse in her chest. Feeling her wolf's desperate pleading. Feeling the weight of a decision that would define the rest of her life. 30 days. That's all he was asking for. 30 days to learn the truth about the night that had shaped her entire existence. 30 days with a male who was dying because of her. 30 days to decide if she'd condemned a monster or murdered her mate. "Fuck," Aria breathed. And deep down, beneath the fear and anger and confusion, she knew what she had to do. She had to know the truth, even if it destroyed her. "Here's what I want to know from you. Have you ever had to confront the possibility that everything you believed about someone might be wrong? That the villain of your story might not be who you thought? Drop your experiences in the comments. I want to hear your stories, because they matter. And if you're invested in finding out what really happened to Aria's parents, make sure you're subscribed. This story is about to go places you won't expect." Aria closed her eyes, feeling the broken bond pulse in her chest. Feeling her wolf's desperate pleading. Feeling the weight of a decision that would define the rest of her life. 30 days. That's all he was asking for. 30 days to learn the truth about the night that had shaped her entire existence. 30 days with a male who was dying because of her. 30 days to decide if she'd condemned a monster or murdered her mate. "Fuck," Aria breathed. And deep down, beneath the fear and anger and confusion, she knew what she had to do. She had to know the truth, even if it destroyed her. "Here's what I want to know from you. Have you ever had to confront the possibility that everything you believed about someone might be wrong? That the villain of your story might not be who you thought? Drop your experiences in the comments. I want to hear your stories, because they matter. And if you're invested in finding out what really happened to Aria's parents, make sure you're subscribed. This story is about to go places you won't expect. By the time Aria made her way back to the healer's wing, the sun had fully risen and the pack house was alive with activity. Servants rushed past her carrying linens and breakfast trays. Pack members gathered in clusters whispering about the dying Alpha King in their midst, and the scent of fresh bread and tension filled the air in equal measure. The guards, Liam and Theo, were still at their posts. They straightened when they saw her approaching, and something like relief flickered across Liam's scarred face. "He's awake," Liam said before she could speak. "And he's been asking for you." Again. Aria's hands clenched at her sides. "I need to see him. That's why we're here." Theo pushed the door open, his young face serious. "Fair warning, though, he's worse than he was a few hours ago. Bond death moves fast once it starts." The words sent a chill down her spine, but Aria forced herself forward. Inside, Daemon was sitting up in bed, dressed in a simple black shirt that made his deteriorating condition even more obvious. His skin had taken on an almost translucent quality, veins visible beneath the surface like dark rivers. Blood had dried beneath his nose, and his hands trembled slightly as he held a stack of papers. But his eyes, those storm-gray eyes, were sharp and alert when they found hers. "You came back." His voice was rough, like he'd been arguing with someone. Or screaming. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't." Aria stayed near the door, keeping distance between them even as her wolf whined at the separation. "But I need to know the truth. Even if it changes nothing." Something that might have been hope flickered across Daemon's face before he carefully schooled his expression back to neutrality. "Fair enough. Where do you want me to start?" "The beginning." Aria forced herself to move further into the room, perching on the edge of a chair position deliberately out of arm's reach. "You said someone in your council betrayed you." "Who? Why?" Daemon set the papers aside carefully, as if the movement cost him. "His name was Cole Ravenswood. My beta. My brother in all but blood." The words came out bitter. "We grew up together, fought together, built the alliance of the 5 territories together. I trusted him with my life. What happened? He wanted more." Daemon's jaw clenched. Being beta to an Alpha King wasn't enough. He wanted the crown, the power, the absolute authority. And he was willing to do anything to get it, including staging attacks that made it look like smaller packs were threatening the stability we'd worked so hard to build. Aria's breath caught. Moonhaven. Moonhaven was supposed to be a routine diplomatic visit, Daemon said quietly. I was scheduled to arrive 3 days after Cole's advance team. The plan was to discuss trade agreements, nothing more. Your pack was thriving, small, but prosperous. Your father had developed some kind of irrigation system that was producing crops in areas that had been barren for decades. Other packs were interested in learning the technique. He paused, pain flickering across his features, and Aria couldn't tell if it was from the bond death or the memory. Cole saw an opportunity, Daemon continued. If Moonhaven burned, if it looked like they'd harbored rebels or threatened the king's peace, then I would be forced to respond with overwhelming force. It would cement my reputation as ruthless, make other packs too terrified to ever consider rebellion. And in the chaos, his hands clenched into fists. In the chaos, Cole planned to make his move. Blame me for Moonhaven's destruction, turn the other territories against me, and position himself as the reasonable alternative. That's... Aria struggled to process the implications. That's insane. That's ambition, Daemon corrected grimly. Cole was brilliant, charismatic, and utterly without conscience when it came to getting what he wanted. And he almost succeeded. Almost? Your mother. Daemon's voice softened. Charlotte was a seer, wasn't she? Aria's heart stopped. How did you know one knew that? She kept it hidden because seers are rare and valuable and often targeted. Daemon nodded. I know. She told me right before she died. She'd had a vision 3 days before Cole's forces arrived, a vision of fire and death, and of a king who would come too late to save them, but who carried the truth in his hands. He reached for the papers again, pulling out a single sheet covered in elegant handwriting. Aria recognized it instantly, her mother's script, neat and precise even under what must have been impossible circumstances. She wrote this in the hours before the attack, Daemon said, holding it out to her. When she realized Cole had blocked my communications, that I wouldn't arrive in time. One of her friends managed to get it out before. He swallowed hard. Before the end. Aria's hands shook as she took the paper. Her mother's words swam before her eyes. To whoever finds this, we're under attack. Not by rebels or rogues, but by the Alpha King's own beta. Cole Ravenswood came with promises of trade and peace. Instead, he brought fire and death. He seeks to frame Alpha King Daemon for our destruction, to turn the territories against their king and seize power for himself. If you are reading this, I am likely already gone. But please get this message to the Alpha King. Tell him that Moonhaven Pack held no ill will toward him or his rule. Tell him that we died as collateral in another male's ambition. And tell him. The handwriting changed here, becoming more hurried, more desperate. Tell him that my daughter survived. Her name is Aria. She has my eyes and her father's stubborn heart. She will blame him for our deaths. How could she not? But please, Alpha King, if you have any honor, any mercy, find her. Tell her the truth. Tell her that her mother's last wish was for her to live free of hate, to find love, to understand that not all monsters wear obvious faces. Tell her I love her. And tell her to forgive herself for surviving. Charlotte of Moonhaven Pack. Aria couldn't breathe. Couldn't see past the tears streaming down her face. The paper trembled in her grip, her mother's final words searing themselves into her soul. I got this letter 5 hours after Moonhaven burned, Daemon said quietly. By then, Cole had already spread his version of events. The official story was that Moonhaven had been harboring rebels, that they'd fired on my beta's envoy first, that the destruction was a justified response to aggression. I was positioned as the ruthless conqueror, exactly as Cole planned. Why didn't you tell the truth? Aria demanded through her tears. Why didn't you expose him? I tried. Daemon's expression darkened. But Cole had spent years building alliances, planting seeds of doubt, positioning himself as my conscience. When I accused him of treason and showed your mother's letter, half my council didn't believe me. They thought I was trying to scapegoat my beta to avoid responsibility for a massacre. So you let everyone think you were a monster? I let everyone think what they needed to think while I gathered proof, Daemon corrected. It took me 3 years to build a case solid enough that even Cole's allies couldn't deny it. 3 years of investigations, testimonies, evidence. And when I finally had enough, what happened? I challenged Cole to single combat under the old laws. Daemon's voice went flat, emotionless. In front of all 5 territories. The winner would be Alpha King. The loser would be executed for treason. And I made sure every single detail of his betrayal was revealed before we fought. Did you kill him? Yes. No hesitation. No remorse. Slowly. He died knowing that everyone finally understood what he'd done. That his grand plan had failed. That instead of being remembered as a hero, he'd go down in history as the traitor who massacred innocence for power. Aria stared at him, this male who'd carried the weight of Moonhaven's destruction for 12 years, who'd been seen as a monster to protect the truth until he could prove it. The other packs, she said slowly. They know the truth now? Most of them. Some still believe the original story. Lies are easier to remember than complex truths. But the major territories, the ones that matter, yes. They know Cole was responsible. Daemon met her eyes. But you didn't know. You were packless, powerless, surviving in the margins where news like that doesn't reach. So you went on believing I was the monster who killed your parents. Because you were too late to save them. The words came out almost accusatory. Yes. Daemon didn't flinch from it. I was too late. If I'd questioned Cole's loyalty sooner, if I'd insisted on traveling with the advance team, if I'd done 1,000 things differently, your parents might still be alive. That's on me, Aria. I don't claim innocence there. But you didn't order their deaths. No, I didn't. He held her gaze steadily. I failed to protect them. But I didn't kill them. The distinction should have felt academic. Instead, it felt like the difference between everything and nothing. Aria looked down at her mother's letter again, reading the words over and over. Tell her to forgive herself for surviving. How had her mother known? How had she understood that the guilt of living when everyone else died would haunt Aria for 12 years? There's more. Daemon reached for another set of papers, but his hand shook so badly he almost dropped them. Aria found herself moving without thinking, crossing the distance between them to steady the documents. The moment her skin touched his, the broken bond flared to life, a searing mixture of agony and desperate yearning that made them both gasp. She jerked back, but not before feeling the depth of his pain, the way the bond death was eating him alive from the inside out. Sorry, he managed, his voice strained. I should have warned you. Physical contact makes it worse. How much worse? Doesn't matter. Daemon carefully arranged the papers on the bed between them, creating a barrier of evidence and ink. What matters is that you see everything. Testimony from survivors who witnessed Cole giving the orders. Financial records showing he'd been embezzling funds to pay mercenaries. Communications he'd intercepted to keep me away from Moonhaven longer. Aria stared at the mountain of proof, her mind reeling. Why show me all this? Why does it matter if I believe you or not? You're still dying. Because your mother asked me to find you and tell you the truth. Daemon's voice cracked. Because I've spent 12 years trying to honor a dying wolf's final wish, and I'll be damned if I fail now. And because... He looked away, jaw working. Because you're my mate. And even if you never accept me, even if I die with this bond shattered, I need you to understand that I would have protected you if I could. That I tried to protect you by finding you, by making sure you were safe in Silverpine Pack even if I couldn't approach you directly. Aria's head snapped up. What are you talking about? Daemon's expression turned almost sheepish, a strange look on the face of an Alpha King. Why do you think Alpha Cade accepted a packless Omega 3 years ago? He's not known for his charity. I assumed he needed servants. He needed gold. Daemon pulled out another paper, this one a financial agreement bearing Cade's signature and seal. I paid him an obscene amount to take you in, to ensure you had shelter and food and protection. I couldn't come to you myself without risking Cole's remaining allies targeting you, but I could make sure you were safe. That you had a place to survive until I could clear my name and find you properly. The world tilted sideways. You've been watching over me? For 3 years. Longer. I've had people tracking your movements since a year after Moonhaven fell. You're good at disappearing, Aria. Terrifyingly good. But once I finally located you... He gestured at the financial records. I did what I could from a distance. Made sure you had what you needed, even if you didn't know it came from me. Aria's hands clenched into fists. She didn't know whether to be grateful or furious. You had no right. I know. Daemon cut her off gently. But I'd promised your mother. And I keep my promises even when... He coughed, blood speckling his lips. When he spoke again, his voice was weaker. Even when they take 12 years. Something was happening. The scent of death in the room grew stronger, and Daemon's skin had gone from pale to ashen. His breathing turned shallow, labored. What's wrong? Aria demanded. What's happening? Bond death progression. Daemon leaned back against the pillows, exhaustion clear in every line of his body. The moments of consciousness get shorter. The pain gets worse. Eventually. He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Eventually, his heart would simply stop. Panic clawed at Aria's throat. How long do you have? Days. Maybe a week if I'm lucky. His eyes found hers, and the resignation there was almost worse than the pain. Aria, I need to know. After seeing all this, after understanding what really happened, do you believe me? Did she? Aria looked at the mountain of evidence spread across the bed. her mother's letter in her hands. The financial records proving Daemon had been protecting her from afar. The testimonies and documents and undeniable proof that Cole Ravenswood, not Daemon Blackthorn, had ordered Moonhaven's destruction. "I believe you," she whispered. Relief flooded Daemon's face, so intense it looked like pain. "Thank you. That's all I needed. You can go now if you want." "You don't have to." "What about the bond?" The words burst out of Aria before she could stop them. "If I accept it now, would it save you?" Daemon went very still. "Yes. Accepting the bond would repair what was broken. I'd recover fully within hours. Then I'll..." "No." His voice cracked like a whip despite its weakness. "Absolutely not." Aria stared at him. "What do you mean no? You're dying. And you would be accepting a bond you don't want with a male you barely know to save someone who failed to protect your parents." Daemon's eyes were fierce despite the blood trickling from his nose. "That's not how this works, Aria. I won't let you sacrifice yourself out of guilt or obligation. But you'll die. Then I'll die." The shout cost him. He doubled over, coughing, more blood staining his shirt. When he straightened, his expression was absolute. "I've lived 15 years as Alpha King. I've made impossible decisions, fought wars, and carried the weight of thousands of lives on my shoulders. If this is how I go out, giving you the truth your parents wanted you to have, then that's a death I can accept." "That's insane. That's honor." Daemon met her eyes, and despite everything, the pain, the deterioration, the death sentence hanging over him, his voice was steady. "Your mother asked me to find you and tell you the truth. Not to manipulate you into accepting a bond. Not to guilt you into saving me. Just the truth. I've done that now. My promise is fulfilled." "What if I want to save you?" Aria demanded. "What if I choose to accept the bond?" "Then you have 30 days, well, probably more like 7 days now, to figure out if you're choosing it because you genuinely want me as your mate, or because you feel obligated to prevent my death." Daemon's expression softened. "I'm not going to let you make that decision while I'm literally dying in front of you, Aria. That would be coercion, even if unintentional. So, what am I supposed to do? Just watch you fade away?" "No." He reached out as if to touch her face, then stopped, hand falling back to his side. "You're supposed to take this time to get to know me. Not the monster you thought I was, and not the dying male desperate for salvation. Just me, Daemon. And at the end, if you decide you want this bond, that you want me, then we'll have something real. Something worthy of the gift your parents' sacrifice gave us." "Gift?" Aria's voice broke. "How is any of this a gift?" "Because your mother's vision showed her we were mates," Daemon said quietly. "That's what she meant in her letter when she said you'd find love. She saw us, Aria. She knew that if I found you, if I told you the truth, we'd have a chance at something extraordinary. She just didn't know." His voice cracked. "She didn't know you'd reject me first." The room fell silent except for Daemon's labored breathing. Aria looked at this male, this Alpha King who'd spent 12 years trying to honor a promise to a wolf he'd met for mere minutes as she died. Who'd protected Aria from afar without asking for anything in return. Who was now willing to die rather than manipulate her into accepting a bond. And she realized something terrifying. She didn't want him to die. Not because of obligation or guilt, but because something in her, something deeper than logic or history or 12 years of hatred, recognized him as hers. But she'd already rejected him, already broken the bond. And even if she believed his innocence now, could she really undo that decision? Could she accept a mate bond with a male she'd known for less than 24 hours? 7 days, she said suddenly. Daemon's eyes widened. "What?" "You said I have 7 days before the bond. Death is irreversible. So give me 7 days. Not to feel guilty, not to be manipulated. Just 7 days to know you. To decide if this is something I want, not something I'm obligated to do." Aria stood, squaring her shoulders. 7 days, Daemon. And at the end, I'll give you my decision. Accept or reject, final answer. Aria, don't argue with me. She moved toward the door, then paused, looking back at him. At this powerful, broken male who looked at her like she was his entire world. And Demon? Thank you. For keeping your promise to my mother. For telling me the truth. She swallowed hard. For everything. Then she fled before he could see the tears starting to fall. Because the truth was suddenly, devastatingly clear. She'd spent 12 years hating the wrong male. And now she had 7 days to decide if she could love the right one before he died. I want to ask you something, and I want you to really think about it. If you discovered you'd been wrong about someone for years, that the villain you'd built in your mind was actually innocent, how would you handle it? Could you forgive yourself for the mistakes you made? Drop your honest thoughts below, because this is where Aria's real journey begins. And make sure you're subscribed, because the next 7 days are going to change everything. The first day of the 7 Aria had given herself, she avoided Demon entirely. It wasn't difficult. The pack house was massive, and she knew every servant's passage, every hidden corner, every route that would keep her invisible. Old habits died hard, and invisibility had kept her alive for too long to abandon it now, even if the male she was hiding from was dying because of her. Especially because he was dying because of her. She threw herself into work instead. Scrubbing floors that didn't need scrubbing, organizing storage rooms that were already organized, anything to keep her hands busy and her mind from spiraling into the terrifying realization that had taken root in her chest. She'd been wrong about Daemon Blackthorn. Completely, catastrophically wrong. And now he was going to die because of her mistake. You're going to scrub a hole through that floor if you keep going. Aria looked up to find Lana standing in the doorway of the storage room, arms crossed, expression somewhere between concerned and exasperated. I'm fine, Aria said automatically, returning to her aggressive scrubbing. You're avoiding him. I'm working. You've reorganized this room 3 times in the past 4 hours. Lana walked over and physically removed the brush from Aria's white-knuckled grip. Talk to me. What happened in the healer's wing? Aria's hands trembled without the brush to hold. She clenched them into fists. He showed me proof. Documents, testimonies, a letter from my mother. Everything I believed about Moonhaven's destruction was. Her voice cracked. It was a lie. He didn't kill my parents. His beta did. Cole Ravenswood orchestrated the whole thing to frame Demon and seize power. Lana's eyes widened. Oh, Aria. And he's been watching over me. For years. Making sure I was safe, that I had shelter and food. He paid Alpha King to take me in. Aria laughed bitterly. I spent 12 years hating him, and he spent 12 years protecting me. That's actually kind of. Don't say romantic. Aria's voice turned sharp. There's nothing romantic about this. I rejected my mate based on a lie, and now he's dying, and I have 7 days to decide if I can accept a bond with someone I barely know to save his life. 7 days. Lana's expression shifted to alarm. I thought bond death took 30 days for Alpha Kings. It does. Usually. But rejection speeds up the process, and Demon's not fighting it. He's just. Aria's throat closed. Accepting it. Like he thinks he deserves it for failing to save my parents. Lana was quiet for a moment. Then, what do you want to do? I don't know. The words burst out of Aria with more force than she intended. I don't know anything anymore. A week ago, my life was simple. Horrible, but simple. I knew who I was, a packless Omega, a survivor, someone who'd lost everything to a monster. And now you find out the monster was actually trying to honor your mother's dying wish by finding you and telling you the truth, Lana finished gently. Now you have to reconcile who you thought he was with who he actually is. And I have 7 days to do it before he dies. So stop hiding in storage rooms and go talk to him. Aria looked at her friend, this Omega who'd shown her more kindness in 3 years than most wolves showed in a lifetime. What if I can't? What if I go there and I still can't get past what happened? What if the bond isn't enough to overcome 12 years of? Then he dies, Lana said bluntly. And you live with that choice. But at least you'll know you tried. She squeezed Aria's shoulder. You have 7 days, Aria. Don't waste them being afraid. Day 2. Aria made it as far as the healer's wing before her courage failed. She stood outside the door for 20 minutes, hand raised to knock, heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Inside, she could hear Daemon's voice rough with pain but steady, talking to someone. His guards, probably, or maybe the healer. Just knock. Just open the door. Just. But every time she tried, she saw fire. Heard screaming. Felt her mother's blood-soaked hands cupping her face one last time. The memories didn't care that Daemon wasn't responsible. Trauma didn't operate on logic. So Aria turned around and fled, again, hating herself for the cowardice, but unable to overcome it. She made it 3 steps before running directly into someone's chest. Strong hands caught her shoulders, steadying her. Aria looked up into the scarred face of Liam, Daemon's lead guard, his expression unreadable. You're running away again, he observed. Not accusatory. Just factual. I'm not. You are. Liam released her but didn't step back, effectively blocking her escape route. This is the 3rd time you've come to this hallway in 2 days and left without going inside. Aria's cheeks burned. I didn't realize I was being monitored. You're the king's mate. Of course you're being monitored. Liam's scarred face softened slightly. But I'm not telling you this to shame you. I'm telling you because he knows. Her stomach dropped. What? He can sense you through the bond, even broken. He knows when you come close. Knows when you leave without entering. Liam's voice was gentle now, almost pitying. And every time you do, it kills him a little more. Not physically, though that's happening anyway. But here. He tapped his chest, over his heart. Where it matters. Guilt crashed over Aria like a wave. I'm not trying to hurt him. You're afraid. Liam nodded. I get it. But fear is a luxury you don't have right now. You have 5 days left. 5 days to decide if you're going to let him die or give this bond a real chance. And you can't make that decision by hiding in servants' quarters and storage rooms. What if I go in there and I still can't do it? Aria's voice came out small, broken. What if I'm too damaged, too angry too? Then at least you'll know you tried. Liam stepped aside, clearing her path to the door. But running away without trying? That's the coward's choice. And I don't think you're a coward, Aria. Cowards don't survive what you survived. They don't reject Alpha Kings in front of entire packs. They don't ask for 7 days to make an impossible decision. He was right. She hated that he was right, but he was. Aria took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and knocked on the door before her courage could fail again. Come in, Daemon's voice called, rough but steady. She pushed the door open. The healer's chamber looked different in daylight. Less ominous, more sad. Daemon sat propped against pillows, dressed in a simple gray shirt that made the dark circles under his eyes even more pronounced. He looked worse than he had 2 days ago, skin almost translucent, movements careful as if everything hurt. But his eyes, those storm gray eyes, lit up when he saw her. Aria. Her name sounded like a prayer. You came. I've been. She swallowed hard, stepping into the room, but keeping distance between them. I've been trying to come for 2 days. I just couldn't. I wasn't ready. And now? Something vulnerable flickered across his face. Are you ready now? No. The honest answer felt like the only option. But I'm here anyway. Daemon's lips quirked in a sad smile. Fair enough. Wanna sit? Aria moved to the chair she'd occupied during their first conversation, the one positioned carefully out of arm's reach. The distance felt both necessary and wrong, like trying to build a relationship with a chasm between them. Which, she supposed, was exactly what they were doing. You look worse, she said bluntly. I'm dying. It comes with the territory. Daemon's attempt at humor fell flat. But I'm still here. Still conscious. That's more than I expected. Why aren't you fighting it? The question burst out of her. Everyone says Alpha Kings usually rage against bond death, try to force acceptance, use their power to survive. But you're just letting it happen. Daemon was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft, thoughtful. Do you know what the worst part of being Alpha King is? The politics? The violence? The impossible decisions? The loneliness? He looked at her, and the raw honesty in his gaze made her breath catch. I have guards, advisors, allies, wolves who would die for me without question. But I've never had anyone who just sees me. Daemon. Not the crown, not the power, not the reputation. Just the male beneath all of that. That's what you think I'll do. See you. You already have. His smile was sad but genuine. You rejected me, Aria. Do you have any idea how rare that is? Most wolves would have accepted the bond instantly just for the power and position that comes with being the Alpha King's mate. But you looked at me, at what you thought I'd done, and you chose your principles over fate itself. That takes courage. That takes strength. And it tells me that if you do eventually accept this bond, it won't be for the wrong reasons. Aria's chest tightened. What if I can't? What if the bond isn't enough to overcome what happened? Then I die knowing my mate was strong enough to choose her own path, Daemon said simply. And honestly, that's not the worst way to go. Stop talking about dying like it doesn't matter. It matters. His voice sharpened. But what matters more is that you don't accept this bond out of guilt or obligation. If we're going to be mates, Aria, truly mates, it has to be because you want me. Not because you feel responsible for my death. That's an impossible standard. You have 5 days left. Then we'd better make them count. Daemon shifted carefully, gesturing to a stack of books on the bedside table. I thought maybe we could start with something simple. Get to know each other. Not the Alpha King and the traumatized Omega, just 2 wolves who fate decided should be together. How do you suggest we do that? Tell me something about yourself. Something real. Something that has nothing to do with Moonhaven or mate bonds or any of this mess. His eyes searched hers. Tell me who Aria is when she's not surviving. The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked her that before. For 12 years, survival had been her entire identity. I don't know, she admitted quietly. I haven't been anything but a survivor since I was 11 years old. Then tell me who you were before that. What did young Aria dream about? The memories hurt, but Aria forced herself to reach for them. I wanted to be a healer. Like Nora, but better. My mother said I had gentle hands and a gentle heart. That I could soothe wolves just by being near them. She laughed bitterly. Seems ridiculous now. Why? Because I rejected my mate and sentenced him to death. The words came out harsh. That's not exactly the action of someone with a gentle heart. That's the action of someone who thought she was protecting herself from a monster, Daemon corrected. There's a difference. And for what it's worth. He hesitated, then continued. Your mother was right. You do have gentle hands and a gentle heart. I felt it through the bond, before you rejected me. It's still there underneath all the armor you've built to survive. You can't know that. I'm your mate. I can feel things about you that even you might not realize. His expression turned wistful. Your favorite color is green, not the bright green of new leaves, but the deep green of pine forests. You hum when you're nervous, always the same melody, though you probably don't realize you're doing it. And you dream of having a garden someday, a place where things grow instead of die. Aria stared at him, heart pounding. How do you? The bond. He tapped his chest. Even broken, it still whispers things about you. Little pieces of your soul that found their way to mine in the seconds before you rejected me. His voice dropped. Want to know what else I know? She shouldn't want to know. Shouldn't encourage this intimacy that felt both terrifying and inevitable. But she nodded anyway. You're terrified of being abandoned again, Daemon said softly. Of letting anyone close enough to hurt you the way losing your parents hurt. You've convinced yourself that staying alone is safer, that invisibility is armor. But deep down, you're desperately lonely. You want connection, family, pack. You just don't believe you deserve it. Tears pricked at Aria's eyes. Stop. Why? Because it's true. Daemon's gaze was intense, but not unkind. Aria, everything you've done for 12 years has been about surviving. But surviving isn't living. And your mother's last wish wasn't just for you to survive. It was for you to live. To find love. To be free of the hate and fear that's been eating you alive. Easy for you to say. You're not the one who watched your parents die. No. Daemon's voice went hard. But I am the one who held your mother while she took her last breath. Who heard her beg me to find you, to protect you, to help you become the wolf she knew you could be. And I've spent 12 years trying to honor that promise, while you've spent 12 years convincing yourself you're not worth saving. The words hit like physical blows. Aria stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I should go. Aria. I need time. Space. I can't, her voice broke. I can't do this right now. She was at the door when his voice stopped her. For more days, Daemon said quietly. That's all we have left. Please, don't waste them running away from the truth. Aria didn't respond. Couldn't. She just fled, again, his words chasing her down the corridor. You're not worth saving. Was that really what she believed? That she didn't deserve love, connection, a mate bond with someone who saw her, truly saw her, despite all her broken pieces? Maybe. Or maybe she'd just been surviving for so long that she'd forgotten how to live. Day 3, something shifted. Aria woke before dawn, her dreams haunted by storm-gray eyes and her mother's final words. She lay in the dark servants' quarters, listening to the soft breathing of the other Omegas, and made a decision. If she only had 4 days left with Daemon, whether to accept or reject the bond, she wasn't going to waste them hiding. She dressed quickly, braided her hair with shaking hands, and made her way to the healer's wing before her courage could fail. Liam and Theo were at their posts, looking exhausted. They'd probably been awake all night. Is he? Awake, Liam confirmed. And he'll be glad to see you. He had a rough night. Guilt twisted in Aria's stomach. How rough? The kind where we weren't sure he'd make it to morning, Theo said bluntly, earning a sharp look from Liam. But the younger guard didn't back down. She deserves to know. Time's running out. 4 days. That's all they had left. Aria knocked, waited for Daemon's rough come in, and entered. He looked worse. So much worse that Aria's breath caught. His skin had taken on a grayish hue, and the veins beneath were dark, prominent. Blood stained his pillow, and his movements were slow, pained. But he smiled when he saw her. You came back. I said I would. Aria moved to her usual chair, but this time, she pulled it closer to the bed. Not touching distance, she wasn't ready for that, but closer. I'm sorry about yesterday. I shouldn't have run. You were protecting yourself. That's instinct. Daemon studied her with those two perceptive eyes. But you're here now. That's what matters. Tell me more, Aria said suddenly. About you. Not the Alpha King, not the political stuff. Just you. What do you like? What do you dream about? What? Her voice softened. What would you have wanted if we'd had time? If we'd met under different circumstances? Daemon's expression turned wistful. You really want to know? I have 4 days to decide if I want to spend the rest of my life with you or let you die. So yes, I want to know. He was quiet for a moment, considering. Then, I dream about having a partner. An equal. Someone who challenges me, keeps me honest, calls me out when I'm being an ass. He smiled slightly. Someone who's strong enough to reject me when she thinks I'm a monster. I thought you said that was courage. It was. It is. His smile turned sad. But it was also what I've always needed and never had. Every wolf in the 5 territories treats me like I'm either a god or a demon. But you? You looked me in the eye and said, no, that's... He struggled for words. That's everything. Aria's chest tightened. What else? I want a home. The admission came out soft, almost embarrassed. Not a throne room or a pack house. Just a home. Somewhere quiet where I can take off the crown and just be. Maybe a cabin in the mountains. Maybe a cottage near the sea. Somewhere far enough from politics that I can breathe. That doesn't sound like an Alpha King. Maybe I'm tired of being an Alpha King. Demon met her eyes. I've spent 15 years carrying the weight of 5 territories. Making impossible decisions. Sacrificing everything, my freedom, my happiness, my chance at having a mate who wanted me for the greater good. And I do it again, because that's what leadership means. But sometimes, his voice dropped. Sometimes I wonder what my life would be like if I was just demon. Just a wolf with a mate and a home and no crown weighing me down. You'd give up being Alpha King? For what? For a normal life? For the right life? His gaze intensified. For a life with someone who really saw me, and chose me anyway. Not because I'm powerful, not because I can give them status or protection, but because of who I am underneath all of that. And you think I'm that person? I know you are. Demon's voice was absolutely certain. The moment our eyes met, I felt it. That recognition. That certainty that fate hadn't just given me a mate, it had given me the one wolf in the entire world who could understand me. Who could be my equal, my partner, he stopped, swallowing hard. My home. Aria's hands trembled in her lap. You barely know me. I know enough. He leaned forward slightly, wincing at the pain the movement caused. I know you're stronger than you realize. Braver than you believe. Kinder than you've allowed yourself to be in years. I know you hum when you're nervous and that you dream of gardens. I know your favorite color and that you wanted to be a healer. His voice softened. And I know that somewhere beneath all the armor and fear, there's a wolf who wants connection just as desperately as I do. That's not fair. You're using the bond too. I'm using the bond to tell you the truth. Demon's eyes held hers. In 4 days, I'll be dead. The bond will be gone forever. And you'll be free to live your life however you want. But before that happens, I want you to know that if we'd had time, if circumstances had been different, I would have courted you properly. Would have shown you every day that you're not just my mate by fate, but my choice. My home. Tears spilled down Aria's cheeks before she could stop them. Stop. Please stop. Why? Because you're making me feel things I can't afford to feel. The words burst out of her, raw and desperate. Because I've spent 12 years surviving and feeling things, wanting things, caring about things, that's how you get destroyed. And you're asking me to risk everything, my safety, my carefully built walls, my entire identity, on a bond one didn't ask for with a male I barely know who's going to die in 4 days anyway. I know. Demon's voice was gentle. I know I'm asking the impossible. But Aria, what if you take the risk anyway? Day 4 began with Aria waking up in a chair beside Demon's bed. She hadn't meant to fall asleep there. After their conversation yesterday, after she'd finally touched him, felt the broken bond pulse with desperate hope between them, they'd talked for hours. About everything and nothing. His childhood in the Northern Territories. Her memories of Moonhaven before the fire. The small, inconsequential details that built a life. Favorite foods, embarrassing stories, dreams they'd never told anyone else. Somewhere around midnight, exhaustion had pulled her under. Now, in the gray pre-dawn light, Aria opened her eyes to find Demon watching her with an expression so tender it made her chest ache. You stayed, he said softly, his voice rough with disuse and emotion. I fell asleep. I didn't mean to. I'm glad you did. He shifted slightly, wincing. The movement revealed just how much worse he'd gotten overnight. His skin had taken on an almost translucent quality, the dark veins beneath standing out in sharp relief. Blood had dried beneath his nose and at the corners of his mouth. It's been a long time since I woke up with someone nearby who wasn't guarding me or treating me like a king. It was nice. Aria's throat tightened. 3 days. That's all they had left. How are you feeling? She asked, though the answer was obvious. Like I'm dying. A weak smile. But I'm still here. Still conscious. That's more than I expected to have. His storm gray eyes found hers. Still have you here. That's more than I deserve. Stop saying that. You didn't do anything wrong. I failed to protect your parents. Failed to stop Cole before he could destroy Moonhaven. Failed to find you for years afterward. Daemon's voice was steady despite the pain etched across his features. I may not have ordered their deaths, but I still carry the weight of them. That's leadership, Aria. Every life lost on your watch becomes a ghost you carry forever. How many ghosts do you carry? Too many. The admission came out tired, ancient. Hundreds. Maybe thousands. Every wolf who died in the territorial wars, every innocent caught in the crossfire, every decision I made that cost lives even when it was the right call. He closed his eyes. Being Alpha King means making impossible choices and living with the consequences. It's lonely, brutal, and most days, I'm not sure the peace I've built was worth the price. Aria found herself reaching for his hand again, ignoring the way the broken bond screamed at the contact. Do you regret it? Becoming Alpha King? No, but I regret what it cost me. He turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through hers carefully, like she was something precious and fragile. I gave up everything for this crown. My freedom. My chance at a normal life. The possibility of having a mate who wanted me before they knew what I was. His thumb traced circles on her palm. And now fate gives me exactly what I always wanted, a mate who rejected me before she knew I was a king, and I have 3 days to convince her I'm worth accepting. You're not trying very hard to convince me, Aria observed. Most males would be using every manipulation tactic possible. Most males aren't me. Daemon's eyes opened, and the intensity there stole her breath. I don't want you to accept this bond because you feel obligated or guilty. I want you to choose me, not the crown or the power, or I don't want you at all. Even if that choice kills me. That's insane. That's love. The word dropped between them like a stone. Real love. The kind that puts the other person's well-being above your own. The kind your parents had. Your mother died so you could live, and she did it without hesitation. That's what I want, Aria. Not a politically convenient bond or a guilt-driven acceptance. I want what your parents had. What I've spent 15 years believing was impossible for someone like me. Aria's breath caught. You barely know me. How can you talk about love? Because I felt it the moment our eyes met. Daemon's voice was absolutely certain. The bond doesn't create love, it recognizes it. It finds the one soul that matches yours and says, this is it. This is home. And the second I saw you, his grip on her hand tightened. The second I saw you, everything else stopped mattering. The crown, the territories, the weight of 15 years of leadership, all of it just fell away. And all I could think was, there she is. Finally. The one I've been waiting for. Tears pricked at Aria's eyes. I can't, this is too much. I know. I'm sorry. I don't mean to overwhelm you. Daemon brought her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles that sent electricity racing up her arm. But I have 3 days left, and I'm not going to waste them pretending I feel less than I do. So yes, I love you. I loved you the moment I saw you, and I'll love you until my heart stops beating. Whether you accept that or not is your choice. What if I can't love you back? The question came out small, scared. What if I'm too broken, too damaged, too? Then I'll love you anyway. Simple. Absolute. And maybe someday, when you're ready, you'll let yourself feel it too. The door opened before Aria could respond. Nora bustled in carrying a tray of herbs and bandages, her expression grim when she saw Daemon's deteriorating condition. You look worse, she said bluntly, setting the tray down. The bond death is accelerating. At this rate, you have 2 days. 3 at most. The words hit like a physical blow. Aria's hand tightened involuntarily on Daemon's. 2 days, he repeated quietly. Then we'd better make them count. There's something else. Nora pulled out a sealed letter, her expression troubled. This arrived this morning. From the Northern Council. They're not pleased about your situation. Daemon's expression hardened. Let me guess. They want me to return immediately. Can't have the Alpha King dying in some backwater pack. They want you to force the bond acceptance. Nora's voice was careful. They're claiming that your death would destabilize the 5 territories, possibly trigger new territorial wars. They're invoking the emergency protocols that allow an Alpha King to compel a mate bond in times of crisis. Horror crashed over Aria. He can do that? Force me to accept. Technically, yes. Daemon's voice was tight with barely controlled anger. The old laws allow it in extreme circumstances. If my death would genuinely threaten the stability of the territories, I could invoke ancient rites and compel your acceptance through blood magic and Alpha command. Are you going to? Aria tried to pull her hand away, but he held on gently. No. The word was absolute. I told you, I won't manipulate or force you. The Northern Council can invoke whatever protocols they want. I'm not using ancient magic to trap you in a bond you don't want. Even if it means you die? Especially if it means I die. Daemon's eyes blazed. What kind of mate would I be if I forced your acceptance? What kind of bond would we have? You'd resent me forever, hate me for taking away your choice. That's not love, Aria. That's possession. And I won't do it. Nora cleared her throat. The council is sending representatives. They'll be here by tonight. And they're not coming to negotiate, they're coming to force your hand. If you won't compel her acceptance, they'll find someone who will. What does that mean? Aria demanded. It means, Daemon said grimly, that if I refuse to use the ancient rites, the council can invoke their authority as my advisors and have another Alpha perform the ritual. It's archaic, brutal, and I've spent 15 years trying to eliminate that particular law. But it's still technically on the books. So someone else could force the bond? Panic clawed at Aria's throat. Against my will? Not if I'm conscious and coherent enough to countermand their orders. Daemon's jaw clenched. As long as I'm alive and mentally sound, I'm still Alpha King. My word is law. They can threaten, they can invoke protocols, but they can't override my direct command. But you're dying, Aria whispered. What happens when you're too weak to fight them? Daemon and Nora exchanged a look that made Aria's stomach drop. Then they do whatever they want, Nora said quietly. Once the Alpha King is incapacitated, the council has temporary authority. They could force the bond acceptance to save his life, with or without your consent. The room spun. Aria stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I need air. Aria, wait. But she was already fleeing, her breath coming in harsh gasps, panic overwhelming every other thought. She'd spent 12 years surviving by staying invisible, by never drawing attention, by never being important enough to be worth anyone's notice. And now, suddenly, she was at the center of a political crisis that could reshape the 5 territories. And powerful wolves were coming to force her into a bond she hadn't decided if she wanted yet. Aria made it to the gardens before her legs gave out. She collapsed onto a stone bench, her hands shaking, her wolf howling in confusion and fear. What do I do? What do I? You're thinking about running. Aria's head snapped up. Liam stood a few feet away, his scarred face unreadable. He must have followed her from the healer's wing. I'm not. You are. I can see it in your eyes. You're calculating how far you could get before anyone noticed you were gone. Liam moved closer, his expression softening slightly. Don't. Why not? If I leave, the council can't force a bond that doesn't exist anymore. Daemon dies, but at least he dies free. And I. And you spend the rest of your life wondering if you could have saved him. Liam sat down beside her, his voice gentle despite the bluntness of his words. You spend the rest of your life carrying the guilt of your mate's death, knowing you ran instead of facing the choice. That's not freedom, Aria. That's just a different kind of prison. Better than being forced into a bond against my will. Is it? Liam's scarred face was thoughtful. Because from where I'm sitting, you're not being forced into anything yet. You still have a choice. You have 2 days to decide if you want to accept the bond before the council arrives. 2 days isn't enough time to. To what? Fall in love? Build a relationship? Figure out if you want to spend your life with someone. Liam's voice turned hard. Aria, some wolves know in 2 minutes. The bond doesn't create love, it recognizes it. And whether you're ready to admit it or not, you already know what you want. You're just too scared to claim it. You don't know anything about what I want. I know you've been sleeping in a chair beside his bed for the past 2 nights. I know you hold his hand even though the broken bond makes it agonizing. I know you look at him like he's the answer to a question you've been asking your whole life. Liam's expression was gentle now. And I know you're terrified because the last time you let yourself love someone, you lost them in fire and blood. But Aria, running from love doesn't protect you from loss. It just guarantees you'll be alone when the loss comes anyway. The words hit like arrows, each one finding its mark. What if I'm not strong enough? Aria whispered. What if I accept the bond and then lose him to something else? What if? Then you'll have had whatever time you got. Liam stood, offering her his hand. My mate died 5 years ago. Rogue attack. She was killed right in front of me, and there was nothing I could do to save her. His scarred face twisted with old pain. And you know what I regret most? Not the fact that she died, but that I wasted so much of our time together being afraid of exactly that. I was so scared of losing her that I held back, kept walls up, didn't let myself fully love her until it was almost too late. Don't make my mistake, Aria. Don't let fear steal the time you have. Aria stared at his offered hand, her heart pounding. 2 days. That's all she had to decide. Accept the bond and risk everything, her carefully built walls, her safety, her heart. Or reject it and spend the rest of her life wondering if she'd killed her mate out of fear instead of principle. Neither option felt like a choice. Both felt like a leap off a cliff into darkness. But as Aria looked at Liam's scarred, understanding face, she realized something. She'd been standing at the edge of that cliff for 12 years. Surviving, yes, but not living. Never risking, never connecting, never letting herself want more than just making it to tomorrow. And her mother's last wish, tell her to live, to find love, to be free of hate, those words had never been about mere survival. They'd been about taking the leap. 2 days, Aria said quietly, taking Liam's hand and letting him pull her to her feet. I have 2 days to figure out if I'm brave enough to choose love over fear. You are, Liam said with certainty. You rejected an Alpha King in front of an entire pack. You demanded the truth even when it shattered everything you believed. You're one of the bravest wolves I've ever met, Aria. You just need to believe it yourself. Aria walked back to the healer's wing with Liam at her side, her heart pounding with a mixture of terror and determination. When she entered the room, Daemon looked up, relief flooding his features. You came back. I'm not running, Aria said, moving to her chair and pulling it right beside the bed this time. Close enough to touch easily. Close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his storm-gray eyes. I have 2 days before the council arrives. 2 days to figure out what I want. And I'm not going to waste them being afraid. Something like hope blazed across Daemon's face. Aria. But I need you to be honest with me. She reached for his hand, ignoring the way the broken bond flared at the contact. About everything. No more holding back, no more protecting me from hard truths. If we're going to do this, if I'm going to consider accepting this bond, I need to know exactly what I'm choosing. What do you want to know? Everything. Aria's voice was steady now, certain. Tell me about Cole's betrayal. Tell me about the night my parents died. Tell me what really happened, all of it, even the parts that hurt. Because if I'm going to forgive you for failing to save them, I need to understand exactly what you were up against. Daemon's expression turned grave. Are you sure? Some of it is brutal. I've been surviving brutal for 12 years. I can handle the truth. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right. But Aria, what I'm about to tell you changes everything. Once you know the whole story, there's no going back. Good. Aria squeezed his hand. Because I'm tired of living in half-truths and assumptions. Tell me everything, Daemon. Help me understand. And so he did. For the next 3 hours, Daemon told her the full story of Moonhaven's fall. Not the sanitized version, not the diplomatic summary, but the brutal, bloody reality. How Cole had spent years positioning himself as Daemon's most trusted advisor, while secretly building a network of wolves loyal to him rather than the crown. How he'd orchestrated a series of accidents and attacks designed to make the smaller packs look unstable and dangerous. How Moonhaven had been targeted specifically because Charlotte's seer abilities had detected Cole's deception, and she'd been planning to warn Daemon at their scheduled meeting. She knew, Daemon said quietly. Your mother saw what Cole was planning. That's why he moved up the timeline, why he struck before I could arrive. He couldn't let her tell me the truth. So he killed her to protect his conspiracy. Yes. And he made it look like a territorial dispute, like Moonhaven had been harboring rebels. By the time I arrived, Daemon's voice cracked. By the time I arrived, the pack house was burning. Most of the pack was already dead. And your mother was dying in your father's arms. Tell me, Aria whispered. Tell me what she said. Daemon closed his eyes, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of a memory he'd carried for 12 years. She was barely conscious. Your father had already passed, killed trying to protect her. And she looked at me with these eyes, your eyes, and she said, You're too late, Alpha King. But you can still save one. I asked her what she meant, and she grabbed my hand with strength she shouldn't have had left. She said, My daughter, Aria. She's alive. She ran. Find her. Tell her the truth. Tell her this wasn't your fault. It was Cole Ravenswood, your beta. He's a traitor. He'll destroy you and the territories if you don't stop him. And then, Daemon's voice broke. Then she made me swear. Made me promise on my crown, on my life, that I would find you. That I would tell you what really happened. That I would help you live free of hate and fear. She said, Aria will blame you. She'll hate you. But please, help her understand. Help her forgive. Help her live. Those were her last words. And then she was gone. Tears streamed down Aria's face. Why didn't you tell anyone? Why let everyone believe you'd ordered the massacre? Because Cole's network was so extensive that I didn't know who I could trust. If I'd revealed what your mother told me immediately, Cole would have known I was onto him. He would have destroyed the evidence, killed the witnesses, and solidified his power before I could stop him. Daemon opened his eyes, and the pain there was devastating. I let everyone believe the worst of me. Let them think I was the ruthless monster who'd destroyed Moonhaven. Because it was the only way to keep Cole from realizing I knew the truth while I built my case. 3 years, Aria breathed. You spent 3 years being seen as a monster to protect the truth. And another 9 years searching for you. Daemon's hand tightened on hers. Once I'd exposed and executed Cole, I used every resource at my disposal to find you. But you'd learned to be invisible, Aria. You moved constantly, never stayed anywhere long enough to leave records, used different names. By the time I tracked you to Silver Pine Pack, you'd been here 3 years. And his voice turned bitter. I paid Cade to keep you safe while I figured out how to approach you. How to tell you the truth without traumatizing you further. And then fate took the choice out of my hands by making you my mate. The cruelest gift, Aria murmured, remembering his words from days ago. Or the kindest. Daemon brought her hand to his chest, right over his heart. Even through his shirt, she could feel how weak his heartbeat had become. Irregular. Fading. Because now you know the whole truth. You understand what really happened. And in 2 days, when the council arrives, you can make your choice with full knowledge. Not the half-truths and assumptions you've carried for 12 years, but the actual, brutal, complicated reality. Aria was quiet for a long moment, processing everything. The weight of it, the complexity, the impossible choices Daemon had made that had cost him his reputation, but saved the territories from civil war. I would have done the same thing, she said finally. If I'd been in your position, I would have sacrificed my reputation to save thousands of lives. I would have let people think the worst of me if it meant stopping a traitor and preventing war. Her voice broke. I hate that you had to carry that alone. That you spent 12 years being seen as a monster to protect a truth most wolves never learned. It was worth it. Daemon's eyes held hers. Day 5 should have been perfect. It started with Aria waking up again, in the chair beside Daemon's bed, their hands intertwined even in sleep. The morning sun streamed through the window, painting everything in shades of gold and hope. For a moment, just a moment, Aria let herself imagine this was normal. That she was simply waking up beside her mate, that they had years ahead of them instead of hours. Then Daemon coughed, and blood splattered across his pillow. Sorry, he rasped, trying to wipe it away with shaking hands. Didn't mean to wake you with that. Aria's heart clenched. He looked worse than yesterday, if that was even possible. His skin had taken on a waxy, translucent quality that made him look more ghost than wolf. The veins beneath stood out in stark black lines, like cracks in porcelain. His breathing was shallow, labored, each inhale clearly costing him. How long? She asked quietly. Daemon didn't pretend to misunderstand. Nora says maybe 36 hours. 48 if I'm lucky. His attempt at a smile was heartbreaking. Not much time left to convince you I'm worth keeping. You don't have to convince me. The words came out before Aria could stop them. I already. The door burst open. Alpha King strode in, his expression grim, followed by 3 wolves Aria had never seen before. They wore the black and silver that marked them as Northern Council members, and their presence filled the room with an authority that made her wolf want to submit. Alpha King, Cade said formally, and Aria noticed he didn't use Daemon's name. A deliberate insult, making it about the position rather than the wolf. The council representatives have arrived early. They demand an audience. Tell them to wait. Daemon's voice was weak but steady. I'm not receiving anyone right now. They're not asking. The lead council member stepped forward, a massive male with silver hair and cold blue eyes. Alpha King Daemon, I am Elder Zane of the Northern Council. We've come to invoke emergency protocols regarding your situation. My dying, you mean? Daemon's tone turned icy despite his weakened state. Say what you actually mean, Zane. You're here to force my mate to accept a bond she hasn't decided she wants yet. We're here to prevent a catastrophic power vacuum that could destabilize 5 territories, Zane corrected. Your death without an heir or a bonded mate leaves us vulnerable to exactly the kind of territorial wars you spent 15 years preventing. We will not allow your personal feelings about mate bonds to endanger thousands of lives. So you'll what? Force her acceptance? Use ancient blood magic to compel a bond against her will. Daemon tried to sit up, failed, and settled for glaring from his pillows. I spent 15 years eliminating barbaric practices like that. I'm not going to authorize their use now. You don't have to authorize anything. A second council member spoke, a female with sharp features and sharper eyes. Elder Margaret. We're not here for your permission, Alpha King. We're here to inform you that if you don't invoke the ancient rites within the next 12 hours, we will do it ourselves. You can't. But there was uncertainty in Daemon's voice now. As long as I'm conscious and competent, I'm still Alpha King. You can't override my direct command. True. Zane's smile was cold. But you're deteriorating rapidly. The healers estimate you have maybe 36 hours of consciousness left. And once you're incapacitated. He let the threat hang in the air. Once you're no longer mentally sound, council authority supersedes all personal wishes, including your mate's. Aria's blood turned to ice. You're going to wait until he's unconscious and then force the bond anyway. We're going to do what's necessary to protect the territories, Margaret corrected. If that means using ancient rites to save the Alpha King's life against both your wills, then yes. That's exactly what we'll do. Over my dead body. Daemon's voice cracked with fury and weakness in equal measure. I am still Alpha King, and I forbid. You forbid nothing. Zane moved closer to the bed, his presence overwhelming. You're dying, Daemon. And your romantic notions about mate choice and personal freedom are going to get thousands of wolves killed if we don't act. So here's what's going to happen. You have 12 hours to convince your mate to accept the bond willingly. If she doesn't, we invoke the ancient rites with or without your blessing. Those are your options. Those aren't options, Aria said, finding her voice despite the terror clawing at her throat. That's an ultimatum. Accept the bond or have it forced on me. Precisely. Margaret's expression held no sympathy. We understand this is difficult. But the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Your personal trauma doesn't give you the right to destabilize an entire civilization. Get out. Daemon's command carried all the alpha power he had left, making the council members' wolves instinctively submit. Get out of this room. Now. And if any of you come near my mate before the 12 hours are up, I will use every ounce of power I have left to make your lives a living hell. Zane held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded slowly. 12 hours, Alpha King. Use them wisely. He looked at Aria, his expression almost pitying. We'll be waiting. They left, Alpha Cade trailing behind them with an apologetic glance at Aria. Silence fell like a stone. I'm sorry. Daemon's voice was raw. I'm so sorry. I thought I had more time to convince the council to back down, to find another solution. I never thought they'd. It's not your fault. Aria's hands were shaking. But Daemon, 12 hours. They gave us 12 hours to make a decision that should take months. I know. He reached for her hand, his grip weak but desperate. And I know what I'm about to say is unfair, is manipulative, is everything I said I wouldn't do. But Aria, if you're going to reject me, do it now. Don't wait the 12 hours. Because if you wait, if I'm still conscious when the time runs out, I'll have to watch them force the bond on you. And his voice broke. I can't watch them hurt you like that. So please, if you're going to say no, say it now. Let me die with the council thinking they can still force the bond after I'm gone. At least then you'll have a chance to run before they realize it's too late. Run where? Aria demanded. They'll hunt me down. You know they will. The council won't let the Alpha King's mate just disappear. Then we find you sanctuary. The Western Territories, maybe. Alpha Roman owes me a life debt. He'd hide you, protect you, even from the council. Daemon was speaking faster now, desperately planning her escape. Or the Southern Isles. They're technically outside council jurisdiction. You could. Stop. Aria pulled her hand from his, standing abruptly. Just stop. You're planning my escape like I've already made my decision. Haven't you? Daemon's eyes searched hers. Aria, you've had 5 days. If you wanted to accept the bond, you would have done it by now. And I won't blame you for that. But please, don't let them force it. Don't let the last thing I do be watching them hurt you. What if that's not what I want? The words burst out of her. What if I don't want to run? What if I don't want you to die? Then what do you want? Daemon's voice was gentle despite the desperation in his eyes. Tell me, Aria. Because we have 12 hours, and I need to know what you're thinking. What did she want? The question should have been simple. But it wasn't. Because wanting meant vulnerability. Wanting meant risk. Wanting meant opening herself up to the kind of loss that had destroyed her 12 years ago. I want time, Aria whispered. I want years to get to know you, to build something real, to figure out if this bond is fate or just desperation. I want the choice to be mine, not forced by the council or rushed by a 12-hour deadline. I want. She stopped, throat closing around the words she couldn't quite say. You want it to be real, Daemon finished quietly. You want to know that if you accept this bond, it's because you genuinely want me. Not because you feel obligated, not because the council is forcing you, not because I'm dying. Just because you want me. Because we could have something worth having. Yes. The admission felt like stepping off a cliff. And I can't know that in 12 hours. I can't know if what I'm feeling is real love or just guilt and panic and the bond screaming at me to save you. I know. Daemon closed his eyes, and a single tear tracked down his too pale cheek. I know, and it's not fair. None of this is fair. But Aria, I need you to understand something. Whatever you decide in the next 12 hours, I want you to know it's not your fault. My death isn't your fault. The Council's actions aren't your fault. And if you choose to run, to reject the bond, to save yourself from being forced into something you don't want, that's not your fault either. How can you say that? Aria's voice broke. How can you tell me it's not my fault when you're dying because I rejected you? Because you rejected me for the right reasons. Demon opened his eyes, and the love there was devastating. You thought I was a monster. You stood up for your principles and your pain. That took courage, Aria. Real courage. And I won't let you carry guilt for making the only choice you could make with the information you had. But now I have different information. Now I know you're not a monster. Now I know you spent 12 years trying to honor my mother's dying wish. Aria's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Now I don't want you to die. That's not the same as wanting to be my mate. I know. Tears streamed down Aria's face. And that's what makes this impossible. Because I don't want you to die, but I don't know if I'm ready to be bonded to someone I barely know. And the Council is giving me 12 hours to figure out something that should take months or years. It's not enough time, Demon. It's not enough. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, what if we had more time? What if there was a way to give you the choice without the Council's deadline? How? You'll be dead in 2 days. Less than that, probably. Not if you accept the bond temporarily. Demon spoke carefully, like he was walking through a minefield. There's an old ritual. A trial bond. It was used centuries ago when wolves needed to verify mate bonds before fully committing. It creates a temporary connection, enough to stabilize a dying mate, but not permanent. It lasts 30 days. And at the end, both wolves can choose to make it permanent or sever it completely. Aria stared at him. You're saying we could accept the bond temporarily? That I could save your life without committing forever? Yes. But Aria, it's not without cost. Demon's expression was grave. The trial bond is painful. It's not the clean, complete connection of a true mate bond. It's partial. Incomplete. You'd feel my pain, my emotions, but filtered through a barrier that makes everything sharper, more intense. And at the end of 30 days, if we choose to sever it. He swallowed hard. Severing a trial bond is agony. Like the rejection, but worse, because you've had time to feel what a real bond could be. Some wolves don't survive it. But it would give us time. It would give us 30 days. Demon met her eyes. 30 days to get to know each other without a death sentence hanging over us. 30 days to figure out if this is real, or just the bond's desperation. And at the end, you make your choice with full knowledge and no council pressure. Accept permanently, or sever and go our separate ways. It was a compromise. A middle ground between acceptance and rejection. It was also potentially the most painful thing Aria had ever considered. What happens if the council finds out? She asked. Will they allow it? They won't know until it's done. The trial bond appears identical to a full bond from the outside, only we would know it's temporary. Demon's voice turned hard. And once it's in place, the council can't override it. They'd have to wait the full 30 days like everyone else. By then, hopefully we'll have found a more permanent solution. Or I'll have to sever the bond and go through rejection agony all over again. Yes. He didn't lie to her. Didn't soften the truth. It's a risk, Aria. A huge one. But it buys us time. Real time, without death or council manipulation forcing our hands. Aria looked at this male, this dying, desperate, honorable male who was offering her a way out that would cost him months of pain instead of days of death. A choice that would give her time at the price of potential agony for both of them. I need to think, she whispered. You have 12 hours. Demon's eyes held hers. Whatever you decide, I'll support it. Run, accept fully, accept the trial bond, reject and let me die, any of it. Just don't let the council force you into something you don't want. Please. Aria fled. She ran through the pack house corridors, ignoring the stairs, ignoring Lana's concerned calls, ignoring everything except the need to get away. She burst into the gardens, the cold air hitting her like a slap, and collapsed onto the same stone bench where she'd had her crisis days before. 12 hours. She had 12 hours to make a decision that would define the rest of her life. Accept fully and risk binding herself to a male she barely knew. Accept the trial bond and risk months of pain followed by potential rejection agony. Reject and watch Daemon die while the council hunted her for the rest of her life. Run and spend forever alone, wondering if she'd made the right choice. Every option felt like jumping into darkness. Every option felt impossible. You're thinking too much. Aria looked up to find Theo, the younger guard, standing a respectful distance away. Unlike Liam, he didn't approach. Just stood there, his expression sympathetic. The Alpha King sent me, Theo admitted. He's worried you'll run. Not because he doesn't trust you, but because he knows you're scared. The young guard sat down on the bench, careful to leave space between them. Want to know what I think? Does it matter? Probably not. But I'm going to tell you anyway. Theo's expression turned serious. I've served the Alpha King for 5 years. And in that time, I've seen him make impossible choices, sacrifice everything for the territories, carry weights that would break most wolves. But I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. That's the bond talking. No. Theo shook his head. I've seen bonded pairs. This is different. The Alpha King looks at you like you're the answer to a question he's been asking his whole life. Like you're home. And I think. He paused. I think you look at him the same way. You're just too scared to admit it. Of course I'm scared, Aria snapped. The last time I loved someone, they died. The last time I had a home, it burned. The last time I let myself want something, the universe took it away and left me with 12 years of trauma. So yes, I'm scared. I'm terrified. Because accepting this bond means risking all of that again. It does, Theo agreed. But rejecting it means living with the certainty of loss instead of the possibility. At least if you take the risk, you have a chance at something real. Something worth having. What if the trial bond is just delaying the inevitable? What if I accept it and then 30 days from now I still can't commit? Then you sever it and you both survive. Theo's voice was gentle. But at least you'll know. At least you'll have tried. And maybe, just maybe, you'll discover that what you're feeling isn't just the bond or guilt or panic. Maybe you'll discover it's real. Aria was quiet for a long moment. Then, did you know his mate died? Liam's mate. I did. Rogue attack. She was pregnant with their first child. Theo's expression darkened. He almost didn't survive losing her. Bond death for a surviving mate is slower but no less brutal. But you know what he told me once? He said that even knowing how it would end, he'd choose her again. Every time. Because the love they shared was worth the pain of losing her. That's insane. That's love. Theo stood, offering her his hand. You have 11 hours left, Aria. Don't waste them being afraid. Go back there. Talk to your mate. And make whatever choice you can live with. But don't let fear make the choice for you. Aria looked at his offered hand, her heart pounding. 11 hours. That's all the time she had left. And suddenly, she knew what she had to do. Even if it terrified her. Even if it might destroy her. She had to take the risk. Because living with the certainty of loss was worse than dying from the possibility of love. Let me ask you something real. Have you ever been so scared of being hurt that you almost walked away from the best thing that ever happened to you? Have you ever had to choose between safety and the possibility of something extraordinary? Drop your stories below, because this is the moment that defines everything. And if you're on the edge of your seat wondering what Aria chooses, these next 11 hours are going to break your heart before they heal it. Aria walked back into the healer's wing with her head held high and her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Daemon was alone now. The council members had presumably retreated to wait out their deadline, and even Nora had stepped out to give them privacy. He lay propped against the pillows, eyes closed, looking more dead than alive. But when the door opened, those storm gray eyes snapped to her with desperate hope. "You came back," he breathed. "Did you think I'd run?" "I hoped you wouldn't. But I would have understood if you did." Demon tried to sit up straighter, failed, and settled for watching her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "What did you decide?" Aria moved to the bed, pulled her chair as close as it would go, and took his hand. The broken bond flared between them, that mixture of agony and yearning that had become almost familiar over the past 5 days. "Tell me about the trial bond," she said. "Everything. Don't leave anything out." Relief flooded Demon's face, followed quickly by caution. "You're considering it?" "I'm considering it. But I need to know exactly what I'm agreeing to. The ritual, the pain, the risks, all of it." Demon nodded slowly, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "The trial bond is ancient magic. Older than the Alpha King position, older than the territories themselves. It was created for wolves who found their mates under complicated circumstances. When acceptance needed to happen quickly, but permanent bonding required more time. How does it work? We perform a blood ritual. Nothing dramatic, just a small cut on each of our palms, pressed together while we speak the old words. The magic recognizes the mate bond already exists and creates a temporary bridge across the break you caused when you rejected me. And that saves your life? Immediately. The bond death stops because the magic tricks my body into thinking the bond is complete. But it's not. It's temporary, conditional. We both know it, even if no one else can tell the difference." Aria's grip tightened on his hand. "What does it feel like?" "The trial bond." Demon's expression turned somber. "Incomplete. Like wearing clothes that don't quite fit. You'll feel my emotions, but filtered through static. You'll sense my pain, but amplified, sharper than it should be. And I'll feel yours the same way. It's not comfortable, Aria. Some wolves say it's like having an open wound that never quite heals." "For 30 days. For 30 days, he confirmed. "And at the end, we stand before a neutral alpha, someone with no stake in our decision, and we choose. Accept fully, and the trial bond transforms into a complete mate bond. Reject and we sever it. Which means experiencing the rejection all over again, except this time we've had 30 days of partial connection. 30 days of knowing what a real bond could feel like. The pain is..." Demon swallowed hard. "They say it's like being ripped in half. Most wolves survive it. But some don't. And even those who do carry the scars forever. You could die from severing the trial bond," Aria said flatly. "Yes, so could you. The mortality rate is about 20%. He met her eyes steadily, refusing to sugarcoat it. "But Aria, the alternative is me dying in the next 24 hours, or the council forcing a permanent bond on you against your will. The trial bond gives us a third option. It's not perfect, but it's something." Aria was quiet for a long moment, weighing the impossible choice before her. "Then, if we do this, if we accept the trial bond, what happens with the council? When they realize it's only temporary, they can't do anything about it. Once a trial bond is in place, it has legal protection under the old laws. They'd have to wait the full 30 days like everyone else. And by then..." A grim smile. "By then, we'll have figured out how to protect you from their interference. I still have allies, Aria. Alphas who owe me debts, packs who respect the old ways. We'll find a way. You're asking me to trust you. I'm asking you to take a chance on us." Demon's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I know it's terrifying. I know every instinct you have is screaming at you to run, to protect yourself, to not risk the pain. But Aria, what if we could have something real? What if these 30 days show us that what we're feeling isn't just the bond or desperation, but actual, genuine connection? Wouldn't that be worth the risk? And if it doesn't? If 30 days from now I still can't commit, then we sever the bond, and I'll use every resource I have to make sure you're safe from the council's reach. I'll find you sanctuary, protection, everything you need to build a life away from all of this." His grip on her hand tightened. "But at least we'll know. At least we'll have tried." Aria looked at their intertwined hands, hers small and scarred from years of hard work, his larger but trembling with weakness. This male who'd spent 12 years trying to honor her mother's dying wish. Who'd protected her from afar without asking for anything in return. Who was offering her time and choice even when it might cost him everything. "When do we do the ritual?" she asked quietly. Hope blazed across Daemon's face, so bright it was almost painful to look at. "You're accepting?" "The trial bond. I'm accepting 30 days to figure out if this is real." Aria's voice was steady despite the fear churning in her gut. 30 days to know you without death or council manipulation hanging over us. And at the end, I'll make my choice with full knowledge. "But Daemon." She met his eyes. "I can't promise you I'll choose to make it permanent. I can't promise you this will work out the way you want. All I can promise is that I'll try. That I'll be honest. And that I won't run. That's all I'm asking." Daemon's smile was radiant despite his deteriorating condition. "That's more than I deserve. And Aria, thank you. For taking this chance. For being brave enough to risk it." "I'm not brave. I'm terrified. You rejected an Alpha King, demanded the truth, and now you're accepting a trial bond that could kill you in 30 days. That's the definition of brave." Daemon shifted, trying to sit up. "We need to do the ritual now. Before the council realizes what we're planning. Nora knows how. She's one of the few healers old enough to remember the old ways." As if summoned, Nora appeared in the doorway, carrying a small wooden box. Her expression was knowing, unsurprised. "You've decided," the healer said. "Not a question." "The trial bond," Aria confirmed. "Can you perform the ritual?" "I can. But child, you need to understand, this isn't like accepting a normal mate bond. The magic is old, wild, unpredictable. Once you start the ritual, there's no stopping halfway. You commit fully to the 30 days or you don't start at all." "I understand." "And the pain." "I understand," Aria repeated, more firmly this time. "I know the risks. I know it might not work. I know we could both die at the end if we sever the bond. But I also know that doing nothing means watching him die right now or being forced into a permanent bond I'm not ready for. So yes, Nora." "I'm sure." The healer studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Very well. Let's begin before you lose your courage or the council comes to check on you." Nora opened the wooden box, revealing a ceremonial knife, ancient, its blade etched with symbols Aria didn't recognize. The healer spoke quietly as she prepared. "The trial bond ritual is simple but binding. I'll make a small cut on each of your left palms. You'll press them together and speak the old words. The magic will do the rest." "What are the old words?" Daemon asked. "I name, accept the trial of fate. 30 days to know, 30 days to choose. Bond or freedom, life or death, I walk this path with open eyes and willing heart." Nora looked between them. "Both of you must speak it simultaneously, with full intention. If either of you hesitates, if either of you has doubts, the magic won't take. It requires absolute commitment to the trial, even if you're not committed to the permanent bond." Aria's heart raced. Absolute commitment. Could she do that? Could she commit to 30 days with a male she barely knew, knowing it might end in agony? She looked at Daemon, at the hope and fear warring in his storm-gray eyes, and knew the answer. Yes, she could. Because the alternative, watching him die or being forced into something against her will, was worse than any pain the trial bond could inflict. "I'm ready," Aria said. Daemon reached for her hand with his right, keeping his left palm up for Nora. "So am I." Nora made the cuts quickly, efficiently. First Daemon, then Aria. The sting was sharp but brief, blood welling in their palms. "Press your hands together," Nora instructed. "And speak the words. Together. Now." Aria pressed her bleeding palm to Daemon's, and the moment their blood mingled, power exploded through the room. They spoke as one. "I, Aria, accept the trial of fate. I, Daemon, accept the trial of fate. 30 days to know, 30 days to choose. The power intensified, making the air crackle with ancient magic. Bond or freedom, life or death. The broken mate bond between them suddenly flared to life, no longer shattered but bridged by golden light that hurt to look at. I walk this path with open eyes and willing heart. The magic slammed into them. Aria screamed. She couldn't help it. The pain was beyond anything she'd imagined, like every nerve ending was being set on fire while simultaneously being frozen. The trial bond crashed into place, not gentle or complete, but forceful and demanding. She could feel Daemon suddenly, his emotions flooding through the incomplete connection, relief, pain, hope, love, agony, all of it amplified and sharp-edged. And he could feel her. She knew he could because his grip on her hand tightened desperately as her terror and determination hit him like physical blows. The magic peaked, held for one eternal moment, then settled into something almost bearable. Aria opened eyes she didn't remember closing. Daemon stared at her, his expression transformed. The deathly pallor was already fading, color returning to his skin. The dark veins were receding. His breathing deepened, steadied. The bond death had stopped. It worked, Nora breathed, wonder in her voice. The trial bond took. You have 30 days. 30 days. Aria could feel it, a countdown ticking in the back of her mind, a constant reminder that this was temporary. That in 30 days, she'd have to choose. Bond or freedom. Life or death. But for now, Daemon was alive. And they had time. That would have to be enough. The council was not pleased. Elder Zane stood in the healer's wing 12 hours later, his face mottled with rage as he stared at Daemon, who was now sitting up in bed, no longer on death's door, very much alive and recovering. You invoked the trial bond, Zane said, his voice dangerously quiet. Without consulting the council. Without authorization. I don't need authorization to perform an ancient ritual with my own mate, Daemon replied, his voice stronger than it had been in days. The trial bond was working, his body was healing rapidly, color fully restored, the deathly deterioration reversed. The old laws are clear. A trial bond is a sacred right of any mated pair. The old laws are outdated relics. The old laws are still legally binding, Daemon interrupted. You taught me that yourself, Zane, when you wanted to invoke them to force my mate's acceptance. But the laws work both ways. And right now, they protect our right to 30 days of trial before making a permanent decision. Margaret stepped forward, her sharp eyes assessing. This is a delay tactic. You're buying time to find a way around council authority. I'm buying time for my mate to make an informed choice, Daemon corrected. Without death or manipulation forcing her hand. That's what you claimed you wanted, isn't it? For her to accept willingly. We wanted you to survive and the territories to remain stable, Zane snapped. This trial bond is a temporary measure. What happens in 30 days when she rejects you anyway? You die, and we're back where we started. Then we're back where we started. Daemon's voice was steady. But at least we'll have tried. At least Aria will have made her choice with full knowledge instead of under duress. The council will not tolerate. The council has no choice. Daemon's alpha command filled the room, making even the elders' wolves submit involuntarily. The trial bond is in place. It's legally protected. And if you try to interfere, I will invoke all of the old laws, including the ones about council members attempting to override sacred mate rituals. Do you really want to test me on this, Zane? The elder held his gaze for a long moment, then looked away first. 30 days. But Alpha King, if she rejects you at the end of the trial, the council will take steps to ensure stability. We won't allow the territories to descend into chaos because of your romantic notions. Noted. Daemon's voice was cold. Now get out. My mate and I have 29 days left to get to know each other, and I'd rather not waste them arguing with you. The council members left, their displeasure evident in every rigid line of their bodies. Aria, who'd been standing in the corner watching the confrontation, finally relaxed. That was terrifying. That was politics. Daemon looked at her, and through the trial bond, she could feel his exhaustion beneath the brave front he'd shown the council. But they're right about one thing. We have 29 days. After that, he didn't finish the sentence. After that, we choose, Aria said quietly, moving to sit beside him. The trial bond pulsed between them, that incomplete, uncomfortable connection that was somehow already becoming familiar. Bond or sever. Life or death, Daemon added. But Aria, I need you to know something. These 29 days aren't about me convincing you to accept the permanent bond. They're about us figuring out if we actually work together. If this is real, or just the bond's desperation. And if it's not real, then we sever the bond, and I make sure you're protected from whatever the council tries to do. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. I've already sent messages to Alpha Roman in the Western Territories. He's agreed to offer you sanctuary if you need it. No questions asked, no obligations. Aria's throat tightened. You're planning my escape route before we've even started. I'm making sure you have choices. Real choices. That's all I've ever wanted for you. Through the trial bond, Aria could feel the truth of his words, the genuine desire for her happiness above his own survival, the love that had somehow taken root in just a few days, the bone-deep certainty that she was worth protecting even if she never accepted him. And feeling all of that through the bond made something shift in Aria's chest. Maybe this was real. Maybe fate hadn't been cruel after all. Maybe the male she'd spent 12 years hating was actually the home she'd been searching for all along. 29 days, she said softly. Let's use them well. The days that followed were unlike anything Aria had ever experienced. Daemon recovered rapidly, the trial bond flooding his body with enough life force to undo the bond death's damage. Within 3 days, he was strong enough to leave the healer's wing. Within a week, he was back to full strength, though the trial bond's incomplete nature meant both of them carried a constant low-level discomfort, like an itch that couldn't quite be scratched. But they learned to work around it. Daemon courted her properly, not with grand gestures or political power, but with quiet moments that revealed who he truly was beneath the crown. He showed her his private quarters, a surprisingly modest space filled with books and maps and half-finished chess games. He taught her to ride, spending hours in the stables with her, patient and encouraging even when she fell. He introduced her to his inner circle, wolves like Liam and Theo who became friends rather than guards. And most importantly, he talked to her. Really talked. About his fears, his regrets, the weight of leadership that had shaped him into someone who rarely smiled. About his loneliness, his certainty that he'd never find a mate who wanted him rather than his power. About the moment their eyes met and everything changed. Aria found herself opening up in return, telling him about the nightmares that still haunted her, the survivor's guilt that had eaten at her for 12 years, the desperate loneliness of being packless and invisible. And Daemon listened, truly listened, without judgment or pity, just understanding. The trial bond amplified everything. Every conversation felt more intense, every touch more electric, every shared laugh or argument more significant. It was uncomfortable and overwhelming and absolutely impossible to ignore. But it was also real. Aria could feel Daemon's emotions through the bond, the love that grew stronger each day, the hope that warred with fear, the absolute certainty that she was his home. And he could feel hers too. Could feel the walls she'd built for 12 years slowly crumbling, the trust that was taking root despite her terror, the growing realization that maybe, just maybe, she was falling in love with him too. Day 15, Daemon took her to the place where Moonhaven had stood. It was overgrown now, nature reclaiming what fire had destroyed. But Aria could still see the outlines of what had been her childhood home, the pack house foundation, the market square, the small cottage where her family had lived. I come here every year, Daemon said quietly as they stood in what had once been the town center. On the anniversary of the attack. To remember. To apologize to the wolves who died because I failed to stop Cole in time. Aria was quiet for a long moment. Then, they wouldn't blame you. My parents wouldn't blame you. They'd blame Cole, because he's the one who made the choice to kill them. How can you be sure? Because my mother asked you to find me and tell me the truth. If she blamed you, she wouldn't have trusted you with her dying wish. Aria turned to face him. She saw us, demon. She knew we were mates. And she still asked you to protect me, to help me, to guide me toward this moment. That means she forgave you. That means she knew you'd honor your promise. Through the trial bond, she felt his emotions break, grief and relief and gratitude crashing together. He pulled her into his arms, and for the first time, Aria let herself fully lean into the embrace. I love you, Demon whispered against her hair. I know it's only been 20 days. I know we still have decisions to make. But I love you, Aria. And whatever you choose at the end of this trial, that won't change. Aria's heart pounded. She could feel his love through the bond, could feel the absolute truth of his words. And she realized, standing in the ruins of her childhood home with her mate's arms around her, that she loved him too. I love you too, she whispered back. And through the trial bond, she felt his hope explode into joy. Day 29 arrived too quickly and too slowly at once. They stood before Alpha Roman of the Western Territories, a neutral party with no stake in their decision, as the old laws required. The council members watched from the sidelines, their faces impassive, but their displeasure evident. You have reached the end of your trial, Roman said formally. Now you must choose. Aria of Moonhaven, do you accept Daemon Blackthorn as your permanent mate, transforming this trial bond into a complete union? Or do you reject him, severing the bond and accepting the consequences? Aria looked at Daemon, this male who'd spent 30 days showing her what real love looked like, who'd honored her mother's dying wish, who'd given her time and choice even when it might cost him everything. And she knew her answer. She'd known it for days. Maybe she'd known it from the moment she accepted the trial bond. I accept, Aria said clearly. I choose Daemon. I choose us. I choose the permanent bond. The incomplete trial bond shattered, and in its place, a complete mate bond slammed into existence, golden and perfect and utterly right. This time, there was no pain. Only joy. Daemon pulled her into his arms, and through their complete bond, Aria felt everything: his love, his relief, his absolute certainty that she was home. Forever, he whispered. Forever, she agreed. And for the first time in 12 years, Aria wasn't just surviving. She was living. 6 months later, Aria stood in the gardens of the royal pack house, her hands buried in rich soil, coaxing life from the earth the way she'd dreamed of doing since she was a child. The garden had been Daemon's bonding gift to her, an entire section of the royal grounds transformed into her personal sanctuary. Herbs for healing, vegetables for the pack kitchens, and flowers just because they were beautiful. It was everything she'd ever wanted and never thought she'd have. You're humming again. Daemon's voice came from behind her, warm with affection. Aria looked up to find her mate leaning against the garden gate, watching her with an expression that still made her breath catch even after 6 months of being fully bonded. Through their complete connection, she could feel his love like sunshine, constant, warm, absolutely certain. I always hum when I'm happy, she said, brushing dirt from her hands and standing. You should know that by now. I do know. It's one of my favorite things about you. Daemon crossed the garden to pull her into his arms, uncaring about the dirt on her clothes. Along with about 1,000 other things I discover every day. Sap, Aria teased, but she leaned into the embrace anyway, breathing in his scent, pine and rain and home. Guilty. He pressed a kiss to her hair. But I have news. The Northern Council just approved your proposal. Aria pulled back to stare at him. They did? Really? Really? You're officially the royal healer and head of Omega Welfare for all 5 territories. Your proposal to create safe houses for packless Omegas, to provide education and job training, to eliminate the laws that allow mistreatment, all of it was approved with full council support. Tears pricked at Aria's eyes. This was what she'd been working toward for months, using her position as the Alpha King's mate to change the systems that had made her life hell for so many years. Giving other Omegas the chances she'd never had. I can't believe they actually listened. They listened because you gave them no choice. Daemon's pride in her flooded through the bond. You presented facts, statistics, testimonials from Omegas across all territories. You made it impossible for them to ignore the problem. And then you offered solutions that actually work. They'd have been fools to reject it. Some of them still think I'm too low-born to hold a royal position. And some of them have learned that my mate's opinion matters more to me than their prejudices. Daemon's voice hardened slightly. Elder Zane tried to argue against the proposal last week. I reminded him that interfering with the Alpha King's mate's official duties would be considered an act of challenge. He backed down quickly after that. Through the bond, Aria felt his protective fury at anyone who dared disrespect her, tempered by his respect for her ability to fight her own battles. It was a balance they'd learned over the past 6 months, him supporting her without overshadowing her, her accepting help without losing her independence. What about the Moonhaven Memorial? Aria asked quietly. Finished. They're dedicating it tomorrow. Daemon's hand found hers, fingers intertwining. I thought we could go together. Pay our respects. Maybe finally put some ghosts to rest. Aria nodded, throat tight. The memorial had been her idea, a permanent monument to the wolves of Moonhaven, with her parents' names carved in the center. A place to remember, to grieve, to honor the lives Cole Ravenswood had stolen. My mother would be proud, she whispered. Of both of us. Of what we've built from the ashes. She'd be proud of you, Daemon corrected gently. You're the one who turned tragedy into purpose. Who used your pain to help others. Who built a garden where there was once only survival. He gestured at the plants surrounding them. This is what she wanted for you, Aria. Not just to survive, but to grow. To bloom. To live. Through the bond, Aria felt the absolute truth of his words. And she felt her own truth rising to meet it, the knowledge that she'd found what her mother had seen all those years ago. Not just a mate, but a partner. Not just survival, but a life worth living. Not just a bond forced by fate, but a love chosen freely. I'm happy, she said, and the simple words carried the weight of 12 years of trauma finally giving way to peace. For the first time since I was 11 years old, I'm genuinely happy. Good. Daemon pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers. Because you deserve it. You deserve everything, Aria. And I'm going to spend the rest of our lives making sure you know it. That's a long time. Not long enough. His smile was radiant. But it's a start. Through their bond, Aria felt the future stretching before them, not perfect, because life was never perfect, but real. Full of challenges they'd face together, victories they'd celebrate together, a love that would only deepen with time. She'd rejected her Alpha King mate once, driven by pain and misunderstanding. But she'd chosen him in the end, chosen love over fear, connection over safety, life over mere survival. And standing in her garden, her mate's arms around her and the sun warm on her face, Aria knew she'd made the right choice. The best choice. The choice that had finally brought her home. So let me ask you one final question. What would you do differently if you knew that the thing you feared most might actually be the thing that saves you? Aria spent 12 years running from connection, only to discover that accepting her mate bond was what finally set her free. Sometimes the scariest choice is the one that leads us home. Thank you for taking this journey with me. If this story moved you, if Aria and Daemon's struggle spoke to something in your own life, drop a comment and let me know. Tell me about the choices you've made, the risks you've taken, the moments you chose love over fear. And make sure you're subscribed, because I have so many more stories like this one waiting to be told. Stories about wolves who choose courage over comfort, about mates who fight for each other, about love that transforms tragedy into triumph. Until next time, keep believing in second chances. Keep believing in fated love. And keep believing that sometimes the best things in life are the ones that scare us most. This is your storyteller, signing off. See you in the next one. Red Heart.